Hello, everybody, and welcome to a podcast that I am doing with my good friend, Jeff Thu, the professional shitbag who runs the show Mother's Basement. Say hello, Jeff.
Well, good friend is a bit of a stretch, but hi! I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you. Glad to be here to defend this show, which I feel needs a bit of defending.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing you on here for a very good reason, and I'm gonna try to explain at length how we got to this point, why we're here, why you and me.
Why,
I'm gonna turn down my gain slightly.
How we have reached this impasse.
Yeah. Well, the point of this podcast, I'll get this out of the way right now. We're not here to necessarily argue. We're here to more present our points, almost individual and independent of each other. Like, we can discuss with each other our feelings, but this isn't so much a battle for the soul of Erased, because honestly, I don't care about what the consensus of quality is for this show.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter
neither.
to me. I care about what my opinion of it is, and you care about yours.
Yeah, and I kind of care about what your opinion is, too, insofar as I want to understand it.
Yeah, that's why I'm very interested in yours in that same respect. So I'm going to explain how this kind of happened. Me and you did this show called The Weebcast. It was a 4-hour-long podcast where we talked about all the new shows that were coming out at the start of the winter season.
Yes.
You can find
you can find it on Digibro's channel, and also you can find another one soon, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. We're planning to do a second one for the upcoming season. Get hype. But, yeah, we did this 4-hour podcast. It was on Digi Does Anime. There was a redirect on this channel, so you've probably seen it. And I also had excerpted parts of it to release by themselves. And we excerpted the erased part, and it already became quite controversial because we were talking about the first 2 episodes of the show, because that was what was out at the time. I didn't really care for it. In spite of the fact that I said I thought it was okay, people really interpreted it like I thought it was the worst fucking thing ever, mostly because I was trying to defend my stance on it against 3 people who were really into it.
Yeah. And this led to a hardening of your heart, clearly.
Yes. Well, it was a really funny experience, just because the way that people reacted to that video was as though I did not host that conversation. Consider that I brought in 3 people who I knew liked the show to talk about it with me, and I, came at it from the angle of not liking it. There's something odd to me, I think, that happens when people listen to podcasts like this one, and this is why I'm trying so hard to frame this as not an argument, is that, we're all friends. The basis of the Weebcast is that we were 4 friends who talk about anime together.
Yeah, we like each other, guys.
Right. We are capable of civil disagreement about our opinions on shows.
Yeah.
But our audiences will sometimes treat it as though we are fighting in a gladiatorial arena. Like I didn't go and edit that podcast and post it to my channel,
Yeah. No, civil disagreement in the anime community becomes civil war. That's how it happens.
So this podcast came out, and I kind of just ignored Erased from then on because everyone seemed to love it. Our anime was all over it. It immediately got a really huge Mal score on my anime list score. It was the 10th highest rated anime of all time within 3 episodes.
Yeah, it peaked at the 4th or 5th highest rated of all time.
Right.
And now it's back down to I think 12.
It's down to 20 now, but
Is
I've
it?
been following it. It's at 17, but because there's a huge gap between Wolf Children and the next thing, I'm really watching it. For me, it's like another show in itself. How far down will Erased go?
How far will it fall as people start digging into it?
Right. Well, that's the thing. So as the season was going,
it's still at 14. It's at 14.
Okay,
that's where it is. Looking right now. Just above Code Geass.
Yeah. So
yeah, sorry.
You were talking about the show as it was going. You were really into it. You wrote this video about episode 2 and a scene that you thought was really well directed. You were telling me it was gonna change my mind about the show.
I was being a little facetious there, but
it didn't happen.
No.
And then the season went on, and I start getting all these tweets that are telling me, like basically, it started with episode 5, which I completely understand why now that I've seen the show.
Yeah.
But starting with episode 5, people started sending me messages saying, I think you might be right. I think you might be right that because I was saying that the show was going to go downhill because, and I'm not arguing that this makes any sense. Before, I've got some people, like a big one being the YouTuber Kanipa Show, who is always arguing that the way I talk about A1 Pictures doesn't make sense because A1 Pictures is not a group. It's they're basically a production company that just hires a bunch of random people to make their shows. But somehow, consistently, every show I've watched from them that starts off pretty good has gone downhill massively in the second half. And I don't know why. There's no logic behind it. Like there should not be any reason for that to be the case, but it always happens.
Maybe they've got like a production committee that just is like, okay, so what does Digibro like? How can we disappoint him massively in the second half of this season?
It's a conspiracy, man. I'm living in the NHK.
Inball.
So.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I've witnessed this phenomenon, but maybe other people don't feel that way because a lot of people still like A1 shows and don't. But I also feel that mysteries in general have the same problem, where a lot of mystery anime and just mystery movies, mystery stuff in general, really banks on like having a really strong premise, and then usually once they try to like explain what's going on, that's when you run into like plot holes and stuff. Because unless they've really constructed very well like how this is all going to add up in the end, then it'll fall apart. So I was saying like it's a mystery show and it's A1 Pictures,
Yeah. To be fair, they didn't entirely do that for Erased, but we'll get to that.
Right.
On the subject of A1 Pictures and Canipa's take on it, I think he's really underestimating the influence that producers can have on the feel of a show and the studio culture. Like, A1 Pictures strikes me as something that borrows a lot of lessons from American television production companies. And in America, the producer is king. The producer-writer is, like, the person who runs almost every show. And while obviously the scriptwriters aren't the producers at A1, I do think that there is a team there working behind the scenes to make sure that every A1 show has that A1 feel to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, because he's also made a video about Madhouse and how, they've changed staff massively and there's been all this fallout and stuff, but, like, historically, Madhouse had a massive number of different people who would work on their shows, but they all felt like Madhouse shows in ways that wouldn't make sense if it wasn't an ethos. Like, I had considered doing a video one time about how when Madhouse adapts manga, they tend to use cinematography that you would not get in manga. And it's not any one director. If you watch the first episode of Hajime no Ippo, there's this whole scene where, like, they really intimately show you Ippo's house and, like, give it this layout and everything, and it feels like this alive location. And then you read the manga, and that whole part's not even in it. And then you look at like Cardcaptor Sakura, which has like this really lived in like tactile world, and the manga for that was like sparse backgrounds and shoujo flower art, like
a clamp manga basically.
Yeah, where you can't tell what the fuck's happening ever. So there's clearly, and those are totally different directors in 5 years apart from each other, but they have this distinct Madhouse look that you just don't get from any other shows. And I can tell any Madhouse show just by looking at it. It's never hard, even now that they've changed people so heavily. Like, I probably wouldn't have guessed that Mahoka was Madhouse at a glance. Maybe not Hana Yamata, although the lighting is very Madhouse, but like, something like Parasite, like, you immediately know.
Instantaneously.
And Mappa still has the same look, because the same producer, Masao Maruyama, is, continuing the trend. So I definitely think that, regardless of who creatively is working on it, the fact that it's from the studio definitely means something. Yeah. I don't know how that could possibly mean that every script goes downhill in the second half, but that's my observation on it.
I think that's partially like just selectively what things you've seen. And
I wish I could believe that, but I've seen so much of their stuff. It's like, it's hard. I feel like a crazy person when I talk about this. I really do feel like Sato trying to explain the NHK to somebody when I talk about A1 Pictures.
Yeah, no, I can see there are a lot of their shows that have gone downhill, like Sword Art Online's the prototypical one, and
Right.
I'm just trying to list off all of the
Nanana's
A1...
Buried Treasure was the moment that it hit me, because that was the show that I really, really was into the first 4 episodes, and then I thought everything after that went downhill.
Yeah,
And that was when I noticed that it was a trend. Like, I hadn't... In Occult Academy was a great example, though the last episode of that is amazing. But, like, that was, like, probably the first one that I felt had the phenomenon, which is another Tomohiko Ito show.
Yeah.
Who is the director of Erased and Sword Art Online, if anybody wasn't sure.
Yes.
He also did Silver Spoon.
Which is consistently good all the way through, I swear.
It's also like a 1-to-1 adaptation of Hiromu Arakawa's manga, so I don't know how much I could thank A1 for that.
He throws in...
They didn't fuck it up, so...
Yeah,
I guess there's that.
He throws in a few of his directorial flourishes that he's prone to doing. But yeah, it is a pretty straight Arakawa adaptation because, I mean... You don't fuck with Hiromu Arakawa.
No,
she just makes good.
She's made some of the biggest stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, just period.
Creator of Full Metal Alchemist. If anybody doesn't know who we're talking about, I feel I like to. I always have to like check myself on like, okay, people who might not know what we're talking about will be watching this.
And Arslan Senki too. She made.
She did the manga adaptation of Arslan.
Yeah, A1 Pictures. They like. A lot of their stuff, I will definitely say, goes downhill. I feel like Suritama mostly holds up beginning to end.
Yeah, and that's a show I really liked and didn't finish, so I need to finish the rest of it. But I love Kenji Nakamura, and I've liked everything he's directed, so I kind of feel like I just have him to thank for that, you know?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And Anohana's another one that I think is perfect beginning to end. Well, perfect's a strong word, but
and I haven't
very
finished
good.
That, so I need to watch the rest of it before I form a full opinion. I saw episode 1, and I thought it was great, and I've always been a fan of the director. And then like I visited my friend in the Philippines, and this was before I had any... Again, like, my whole, like, A1 thing really only started with Nanana's Buried Treasure in 2014, but I've been watching their shows since 2010, and when they first came out, I thought they were great, because they made fucking Sora no Oto, which I thought was amazing, and I was, like, really following their career.
I mean, see, like, we've had a weird reverse trajectory, because my first exposure to A1 Pictures was, Persona Trinity Soul, but I wasn't really thinking of them as a studio then. And then Valkyria Chronicles, which is the most dogshit adaptation of any video game that I've ever seen. But that was years ago, so I'm sure that doesn't bode poorly for Phoenix, right? Cross my...
I've seen some quote unquote quality screen caps from like some kind of screening of Phoenix Wright that happened on A. So
the animation,
just be ready.
Yeah, the animation quality is probably not going to be great. The trailers have made it not look great already, but it's from the director of Space Brothers, which is one of my all-time favorite shows.
And that's one of the ones I haven't seen, so...
Yeah, and
Space... I won't try to... Like, yeah, there are shows... Yeah. It's possible I've somehow missed every good A1 show. But we're kind of getting off topic.
We are getting grossly off topic. I just want to add one more thing about Nanana's Buried Treasure.
Yeah.
Even though the story takes a nosedive, I really like the protagonist in that enough that he sort of carried the series enjoyment-wise for me beginning to end.
I just couldn't do it after a while. When it got to the point where it was like really convoluted and I like literally lost track of what was going on, and then like the last episode was like, what the hell? I don't even know what that was about.
Like bizarre. him on his super Phantom Thief web like BBS that he goes on with all of his family who are Phantom Thieves. That was weird, but I like the fact that the main character in that show is the one going just according to Keikaku. You know, like that's a different
like
kind of
few
protagonist.
Other main characters like Lelouch or Light Yagami, like. It's not that different. Anyway,
but he's more like
I don't want to
Ledouche.
talk about Nanana's Buried Treasure. I want to talk about Erased.
I I just want to say one more thing, which is watch World Conquest Zvezda It's really
I
good.
do want to watch that too.
It's really good.
Again, that's another one where I'm a fan of the director, so I do want to check it out.
Yeah. Anyway, I will stop derailing this.
Yeah.
I'll Noah Zero sucks so fucking hard.
That
Fuck that
definitely
show.
is true.
Okay.
So all of this, I've sort of developed this reputation as a guy who hates A1 pictures. So that's kind of why I didn't want to talk about Erased, because I just did this whole big series on the Asterisk War, right at the start of the season, and I just put out part 9 where I railed against A1, and then
the
right
whole
after
company.
right after that we did this whole podcast where I was shitting on the shows and I was bringing up A1 as part of the reason that I'm not excited for Grimgar and Bokudake, but I got this backlash of people saying you just hate it because it's A1, which doesn't make any sense to me, and I get why people think that, because I've been ragging on the studio so hard and saying that I have a hate boner for it, so I kind of brought it on myself that people would think this. But if you stop and think logically, I like to think I present myself as a pretty reasonable guy, someone who has deep analytical thoughts about things and wouldn't just believe weird bullshit I hate everything from this studio automatically because it's from this studio. I hate A1 because I've hated all of their shows. Like I said, I was really enthusiastic about them when they first came out in 2010, and they were doing lots of experimental stuff. And then it was over time, just after being disappointed so many times in a row, and then also really coming to hate the look, that A1 face thing, which you're totally with me on, that it's a thing, right?
It's especially in their early series, like the Sword Art Online to Magi, there's definitely a proprietary
I think they're starting to get away from it now. With the Perfect Insider was very different. Grimgar is a little different.
Space Brothers is very different face-wise. Yeah.
Sometimes it's obvious that they're pulling from what they're adapting. They're really trying to get that face.
And Brotherhood Final Fantasy 15 looks very different.
Yeah. We just watched that.
Yeah, just today.
It looks very different from good.
Yes. I liked the diner. I liked some of the music, and I think the weapons look kind of cool. I'm trying to put a positive. We'll talk about that on the
So yeah, this whole perception happens that I don't like A1. So I was like, I'm not gonna talk about Erased, because if I do a big thing shitting on Erased, everyone's just gonna say you hate it because it's A1 Pictures.
Yeah.
And then as the season went on, you were praising the show. Other people were telling me that I was right. And then as it went along, I got more and more of those tweets, people tweeting me oh, you're totally right about Erased. I started seeing people bashing on it. And now remember as well that when we did that podcast, I talked about in the podcast that people who were reading the manga had been really disappointed with the way it turned out. So I kind of saw this coming, but once it was confirmed and people were messaging me about it, then I kind of was like, ha, I kind of want to do this victory lap. But then the funny thing was that while everyone else was being disappointed, you were not at all. You were totally into it.
It's hard to say.
When episode 10 came out, you made a video about how it was this amazingly directed sequence when the guy reveals the killer. I think everyone else was saying it was the worst thing that ever happened.
I think it is a very well-directed sequence. I just think that it happens to be pretty poorly written.
Right.
And also, the translation from Crunchyroll in that respect did not help, because a line that was "This is the real me, Satoru," changed to "This is my true form," which is just Jesus fucking Christ.
That's pretty great.
Oh god, no.
Yeah, but so you were all sunshine and rainbows, while other people are telling me that this show's gone to shit. And the show finishes up, I make a tweet and I say this show's a 2 out of 10, and you make a tweet and you say this show's a 9 out of 10, right?
Yeah, and I'll stick by that.
So I make this video, and the reason it ended up happening was really sort of like a trajectory of what was happening in the background with me, where after finishing Astroscore, I really wanted to do another big series, and I wanted to do it on either something really, really good or something really mediocre. And so I thought about Erased, because I thought Erased was going to be like really like a 5 out of 10 for me. Like, it was going to be a show that didn't really appeal to me, but it had, you know, it was pretty solid throughout, and there was no like big issues, and I thought it would be like, you know, give it a 5, and
which is what I thought it would be for you too. That was like,
that's sort of what I expected.
I was surprised when you came out and you're like, this is an irredeemable piece of shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man,
yeah, so that's it had to eventually lead to this. So I ended up, I thought I would do Erased, but then I was like, well, everyone still thinks I just hate A1. I don't want to do 2 A1 shows in a row. So what I did instead was I watched Phantom World, because Phantom World is also incredibly mediocre, if not terrible. And I was like, it'll be the total opposite, because I'll shit on a Kyoto Animation show, which everyone for some reason thinks I'm a KyoAni fanboy, which is not at all the case. I only really like the shows directed by damn, her name's slipping my mind. Yamada Naoki? I don't remember.
You only like the shows with cute girls doing cute things.
Well, that's all of them. But I only really... Well, I'm a big fan of K-On! I'm a big fan of Tamako Market. Those are both by Yamada Naoko. And
Haruhi Suzumiya is the hottest woman on Earth, according to you.
I loved Haruhi back in the day. I loved Lucky Star. But that's about it. I'm not a big fan of all the stuff from the main director, the guy who is doing the current show and like most of their shows. I've never been a big fan of any of the shows he's worked on. So like, I'm not really into KyoAni, and I thought it'd be fun to then like make this big series dissecting a KyoAni show and sort of reverse the curse and paint it like, yeah, I'm not like biased towards this studio or that. But it ended up actually just writing a short video about it, not doing a whole series. And the problem is that Devu has been editing that for a long time, and in the meantime, having written that short series made me think, man, writing a short review of a relevant show is actually kind of fun. And I've never really done it before, because I usually avoid writing about shows I don't like, because when you do that, and you don't explain yourself for 3 hours, people don't tend to react that well, especially if it's a show that they all love. So, you know, I wrote this video about Konosuba, glowing praise, everybody loved it, and then I wrote about Erased and completely destroyed it, and it is by far the most controversial video I've ever made, and the first one that's ever had more dislikes than likes.
It might actually be the most controversial video that any anime creator has ever made, period. just on our anime, I shit you not, you are at the all-time top of most controversial posts on our anime.
I mean,
ever.
I've had a few in that list. A few of my Astroscore videos have sat around in that list, but this one I think will stay there. I don't think this is going anywhere.
No, this has, on our anime, this has something like 1,200 votes and 14 karma. That's ridiculous.
It's a really even split, because there's a lot of people who love it because they hate Erased. There's a lot of people who just will watch a video because it's good, and they don't care about whether I like. I don't know. When you watch a negative review of something you like, does it hurt your feelings, Jeff? Is that something that happens to you?
No, not really. I
think the only time I ever get mad when I'm watching a negative review of something I like is when the reviewer goes out of his way to insult the fans of it.
That
bothers me.
That, or when a reviewer like specifically doesn't get something. Like I got a little bit very salty about the review from Killscreen that tanked Undertale's Metacritic score, because like the guy who played it did the review very clearly didn't
understand the game.
He didn't reach the ending. Like, he didn't reach the first ending. He definitely didn't reach the real ending, and he didn't bother to experiment with the mechanics in spoilery ways that spoiler.
I mean, I think it's valid to write a review from the perspective of not getting it, because, I mean, I hate that something like Metacritic even, like, exists, that we're so worried about the scores that if someone submits a negative review, then it topsy-turvies everything. But like, I actually like when people review something from the perspective of, like, I totally don't get it, because that is someone's perspective. Like, that's helpful for somebody, you know?
I can appreciate that, but this was, like, a perspective of pretending he got it when he clearly didn't.
Yeah, that can be annoying.
That was just like...
But you know, I've tried to, and maybe I didn't do a lot of this in my Erased video. I really didn't try to address the audience that much, except for the specific... Because I really wrote this video specifically for the people who were disappointed in the end. Yeah. Like, I kind of made it out at the very beginning, like, hey, lots of people were disappointed with this. Here's all the comments I got about how disappointed people were with this. And so I kind of addressed those people and were like, you should have known... You know, like, you should have seen the signs. You should have known where this is going. But there's no way for me to make that a video for those people and then have only those people see it. That's not possible, you know. So yeah, it got a really negative reception. And what I was going to say I didn't do enough of in the video maybe is, like, assure people that you're allowed to have other opinions. I mean, I assume usually that most of my audience has seen a lot of my videos. And in all of my negative videos, I go on and on about how it's okay to like whatever you like. It doesn't, but, like, you can like SAO, have fun, you know, like, I'm not going to begrudge somebody. Now, I do want... The reason I write negative reviews is because if I can make people not like a show that I don't like, then it has a possibility of making that kind of show not happen as much. And then good shows that I do want to happen, if I can convince people to get into those shows happen more. So it's really like self-interest, right? Yeah. Talk about shows I like, maybe more of them will get popular. Talk about shows I don't like, maybe fewer people will watch them in the future, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's I think, mostly my motivation for doing the whole... what I do,
end of season things and stuff like that.
The end of season things. I mean, you know, analysis. That's more for me. Just I wanna understand editing and cinematography better because I just wanna do that. Yeah. But like, yeah, definitely. When I did that hit piece on Sword Art Online, that was definitely motivated by. Right. I just want to see that.
Hey guys, please start thinking about this the way I do, and maybe we'll change things, you know, or at least change what is popular in the polls, you know.
Yeah, at least just make stop it so we're that showing up in the our anime polls. Oh,
yeah. So I wrote this negative Erased review. I got a lot of backlash, but the funny thing is, because you also left a comment on my review, which has like a huge number of upvotes. Huge comment. And I think we just kind of fundamentally disagree about the show. But what's fascinating to me is that a lot of the comments on my video, and mind you, I didn't even mention the score I gave the show in the video, but I had mentioned it on Twitter and I'd marked it on my anime list, and I got all these comments from people who were like, the show's not total shit. It's not a 2 out of 10. It should have been at least a 5. It should have been like a 7. It should have been this. It should have been that. And what was interesting to me was how few people were saying it's a 9 out of 10. And you were. And you said that you have people who are mad at you for liking the show so much.
Yeah, I got this one message on my back end that I don't even know how to respond to. That this guy's like, I really like your content, but I'm concerned. Like he's coming to me out of genuine concern that I like this show he doesn't like, and I'm like, man, like he's. I don't know. He's worried about my health or something, and he explains at length all of this stuff.
Well, Jeff, secretly, this is actually an intervention.
This is an intervention because apparently I like bad things in anime. No, I mean, like, I have my reasons for still liking Erased when it's done, and they're definitely not related to the things that people don't like about it. Like, I'm not blind. I can see a plot hole when it's gaping that wide.
So now that I've sort of given us the setup for this, let's just get into it. Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about the plot holes, because funnily enough, neither one of us mentioned those in any of our videos about this, or any of our comments about it.
I mentioned the seatbelt, but that's not really a plot hole. That's
it's more
just
of a presentation issue, and like, but there is like there's just like weird stuff in this, and the moment for me, like, all right, for me, there's this thing called suspension of disbelief. I'm sure you're well aware of it.
Yeah.
And I've always described suspension of disbelief as a tightrope. And on one end, trying to blow you off. What? There's one wind trying to knock you from the tightrope that is like bullshit, and the other wind is cool shit. And I think that when a show has a lot of stuff that like resonates with you and makes you want to keep watching, you can buy a lot more of the bullshit. Like it doesn't bother you because you're engrossed by other things. And whereas on the other hand, when it breaks your suspension of disbelief, then all the bullshit just rushes over you.
Yes.
And I've talked about this a few times in my videos, but like for me, when a show doesn't grab me and then something breaks my suspension of disbelief, it's over. Like there's no recovering from that in a way, unless like a one rare example where it did was Occult Academy that I mentioned earlier from the same director, where like the midsection of the show is incredibly stupid and boring, but then the last episode is so insane. It's like way over the top, crazy, insane bullshit, and it's awesome. And like that was enough to make me overall decide I kind of liked the show. But like
I need to watch this clearly.
You should. It's a roller coaster. Like the whole show, it starts off really good, and then it's like episode by episode, it's either terrible or great, and then the finale is like mind shattering. Like almost the whole last 2 episodes are mind shattering. It's crazy. And it's from the Power of Anime thing that A1 was doing way back in 2010. Where they were trying to do like all big art shows as opposed to the cash-ins that they do now. Phoenix Wright anime, Final Fantasy 15 anime. That's what their next season is going to be. It's cash-ins at this point.
What else is in this season, man?
I don't think they're doing anything else. I think it's just those.
Yeah, they've got an original anime coming up, which is Quilidia Code. Don't know what that is.
Yeah, it has like a really hard to pronounce name.
But I mean, Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash and Erased were both at least attempts at being artistic.
Yeah. To some level, for sure.
How well each one succeeds. Anyways. Yeah, but they're adaptations, not original things.
Yeah, the Power of Anime thing was all original, and that was what made it really cool. But like, so anyway. For me, the moment that broke my suspension of disbelief with this show, like, I wasn't really into it, but it was in episode 5 when he gets sent back to the present, and it just kind of, like, really fast, like, moves through a bunch of plots, and I guess it was really when Airi showed up and was, like, super gung-ho on his side, and she had, like, this weird backstory reason for being gung-ho on his side, like, this strange coincidence of things that had happened in her life that, like, made her want to help him, and then the moment that it was just over for me is and maybe you can explain this to me. Someone hinted at me that it made sense in some way or something, but he's being taken away by the police, and he's like he sees that the killer is there, and he's like, I need to go back, and then he just yells, go back, and he goes back. And up until that point, it was established that the time travel power was like not a voluntary thing. It was like something that just happens to him randomly, and it was usually predictive. It was like, someone's about to die, so we'll send you back, which even that wouldn't make sense with episode 1 because he had to see his mom die before he went back. So I don't know if it's always predictive or what. Like, from the beginning it's a little confusing, but he just kind of activates it in that episode, and I was like, what the fuck? And that was when I couldn't take it anymore. Like, after that, everything went white, and I really didn't take in anything that happened in the show after that.
Okay, so, like, that moment as like a dramatic camera movement and a big whoa moment, I think from purely like a putting cool shit on screen perspective works if you're not bothered by big loud noises in your sound design, which you seem to be.
I just hate the Transformer sound, the one that's like
I love the and all that stuff, but I cannot get enough of the Inception in movie trailers. I actually hate it, but No,
what made me sick of it wasn't even trailers, it was Mass Effect 3. Because every time the Reapers show up, they're like, all over the place. And it's like, why do they even make that sound? It's stupid.
I think they make that sound because you don't have, like, a surround sound setup in your house. Like, I don't either. But I think that that's intended to be, like, a low-level bass rumble that is implying their...
No, it's like when they shoot their lasers that it usually happens. It's like the big laser sound, but it happens constantly.
Fuck, man. I have, like, blocked out
Mass
large
Effect 3.
I've blocked out Mass Effect 3 almost entirely, and I've blocked out large portions of 2, because I want that fucking Star Trek travel in the galaxy. I am getting...
Hey, man, I love 2, but we'll talk... That's another podcast.
That's another podcast with some violent fighting. I love 2, too, just not as much as 1.
You weren't bothered by those, like, none of the stuff from when he came back to the present took you out of it at all?
So, like, his superpower, it's weird, because it's not explained, and it's clearly some sort of, it's a literary device, first and foremost. But if it's explained at all, I think the implication is that it's something that a god is doing to him. The spider Buddha, specifically, the one that dangled that thread down. Or, because, like, obviously there's something supernatural at play there.
Right.
And that was, to me, like, him reaching out to God for like one last chance to fix shit. Yeah. And I think it works unconsciously, not automatically. Like, he picks up in the back of his head something bad happening without fully registering it, and then he does a revival to fix it. Or a replay.
But then why didn't he just, like, instantly replay once he got back to the present, you know?
Because he needed more information to be able to actually solve the problem?
It was suggested at one point, right, that, like, he has to repeat the same thing over and over till he gets it right? Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah. So... Because to me, I thought there was like a few ways that I thought it was obviously going to go that it didn't, which was, I'll give it was surprising. It wasn't impressive, but it was surprising that when he came back to the present, I thought, okay, obviously now Aidi's going to get killed and then he's going to get sent back again. Because I'm thinking his power activates because someone dies. And, you know, her house catches on fire and it feels like they're trying to set that up, but then they save her and you're like, oh, okay. Well, then what is going to happen? And then he gets arrested and he just kind of yells and his power resets. And I was like, oh, apparently what's going to happen is nothing, you know?
Yeah, it's, oh man. So, like, part of the problem with Erased as it is that Irie is sidelined hardcore in the adaptation, and that's because it's a 12-episode series that should probably be like 20 to 24. And that's,
you've read the whole manga, right?
I've read the parts that were missing from the anime.
Okay, because I've talked to people who've read it, but like, just to give perspective, this is an 8-volume manga, and like, usually 12 episodes of anime correlates to about 4 volumes of manga. Like, that's a pretty safe bet.
And it does here. They
subtracted 4 volumes worth of material from
almost entirely from Irie. And I think the reason, like, I think that's a correct decision for, we have this budget, we have this many episodes to make, and if you look at interviews with Tomohiko Ito, it's clear that this wasn't like something that A1, saw big money in and just picked up like Sword Art Online. This was Ito cashing in his Sword Art Online chips for a passion project that he really wanted to make.
That and makes me even sadder, to be honest. But
that's. I mean, it is kind of sad in that the studio ended up giving them only 12 episodes when they should have had 24. Right. But, you know, if understanding like the TV business and understanding where the anime business is right now, a single core series for something like this is the safe bet. And that's unfortunate, but that's
even
how
though
anime be.
I don't know how this is doing in Japan, but clearly in America, a big hit. with streaming and shit. Like, it's huge.
I think it's a big hit in Japan too. It's definitely like a project that they didn't seem to have faith in, though.
It's odd too that they like didn't have more faith in it, because they made there's like a live action movie that came out just like the same week as the finale.
Well, those must have been negotiated and put together simultaneously, almost. Right. I like at different production companies, and it's like, so what happened was he got 12 episodes when he really needed 24, and he decided to cut out everything with Irie, because while Irie is an interesting character and a better character than she is in the anime, she's not the heart of what makes Erased enjoyable for people who enjoy it. That is Kaio. That Kaio's story and all of that stuff in the past, and dealing with nostalgia and learning to trust your friends, and all of the themes of Erased really come into play mostly in the past. And they made the correct decision, I think, in choosing to cut what they chose to cut. But in doing that, it made half of the story really weak.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that. They do what they can to imply that Irie is a more interesting character with shit going on beyond being in high school. But you don't get the stuff that's in the manga of her having this obsession with photography and going into...
Yeah, that... I didn't even get, like, when she showed up at the end with the camera, I was like, what? Was she an artist this whole time? I never caught that.
So, like, there's a whole bunch that was just the ending of the series. Irie is the older sister of the little girl who's in the hospital, and she's the one who gives her that bone marrow transplant. And on top of that, she's the one who punches out the paparazzi and takes their film. And instead of it being the killer acting weirdly out of character, it's her being like, how dare you use film in this way?
That was a really out of character moment in that scene where the guy... I was like, why is he doing that? You know, even because at first I thought when here's the thing, when he did that, it gave me the impression, oh, he's gonna be a changed man, and then he's not at all a changed man. So it was very odd, like in retrospect, that he had done that.
He gets his strange ass redemption at the end of the series.
Is it redemption? I don't. He did get arrested, so
he got arrested, but like he finally got that hole in his heart filled. The other thing that they left out is the entire reason that he's like the way he is, which is that his older brother so he, like, as a kid he was a little sensitive, and he was pretty good at befriending girls, and his older brother used that to his advantage and started raping a bunch of little girls while he was watching, and then got him to clean up after it, and that fucked him up in the head real bad. And he grew this weird twisted morality. You know, here's another weird thing. Shiratori Jun, the guy he frames as the murderer, he actually inspired in him the motto of courage that he passes on to Satoru. So there's a whole bunch of narrative through lines that ended up just getting cut from this adaptation.
None of that gives any extra points to the anime.
To the anime, no, it doesn't. But again, and I do think that those are weak points in the plot structure for sure. I don't feel like this is the right point to... Yeah.
So... here's what I want to get to. You described the heart of this series. Yeah. And see, because I'm someone who, I'm sure you feel the same way as I do about this, that flaws in a work they're always there. There's no such thing as perfect. It's not a thing. I really don't believe in it.
Fooly Cooley.
I don't think Fooly Cooley.
No.
I could find flaws. And
I can too. I'm being facetious here.
But like, I think everything is flawed. Even fucking Pendulum, that little 3-minute short film that people will say is like a perfect. The fact that it's 3 minutes makes it imperfect to me, because it means it doesn't have a lot of ideas.
Okay, the Ghibli McDonald's commercial is perfect.
Ghibli did one?
No,
I thought it was Colorito that did it.
Was it Colorito? It looks exactly like the Ghibli Disney World.
I have no idea. I haven't seen it yet. But anyway, I don't think anything is perfect, and I don't think that hurts things, right? I think when you're judging a show, it's really how much you don't like versus how much you do like.
Yes.
Like, if I gave... everyone knows K-on's my favorite anime. If you didn't know that, go watch my fucking hour and a half worth of videos on it. Because every time I mention it, there's someone who's like, how could it be K-on? And I'm like, I have all these videos. There's like 1 million hours of fucking K-on videos.
And I'm betting on every one of those videos, there's like 50 comments saying, how can your favorite anime be K-on?
No,
what's wrong with you?
All the comments on the videos are like, oh, I get it now. Like, oh, I wish I had actually watched the show before forming an opinion on it. I've gotten lots of people to watch K-on and love it. So it's sort of like, it's one of the things I'm most proud of as an anime guy. But K-on has issues. It has not really any big glaring ones, but it has some episodes that are just kind of boring. But like the stuff that's good is so good that like there's certain scenes in K-on that are better than other entire shows, So
K-on's a good example. I think one that we connect on is Baby Steps, because we both love that show.
Yeah, that's a great example. Baby Steps has terrible animation.
Most of the time.
Yeah, like it mostly looks like garbage, and it's not necessarily beautifully paced. I'd say the overall pacing is great, but the music is fucking terrible. It's like this freeware, like...
Yeah, they've got like 4 loops that they use all the time.
It's really bad.
One of them... I associate with hype so much now that I like it, but...
It's overall like a badly produced show, but it is so good that it doesn't matter. And this is what bothers me when people make the argument, and I know you don't make this argument at all, but when people make the argument with me that Erased deserves a 5 because of the production and everything, like, oh, but it's nice looking, so it automatically gets points. And I'm like, you can make a show that's a 9 out of 10 and looks like dog shit if the stuff that's good is so good that it makes up for the bad animation, Because I would give Baby Steps a 9. I think you consider it like a 10.
I forget what I've got you were looking at my MAL
I think I
more
saw
recently
that.
than I was.
I don't even know
if you had I mentioned it now. Now people are going to see my terrible, incomplete My Anime list.
Well, you're not, your name is confusing on there. Maybe they won't figure it out. It's the same as his Reddit name, so never mind.
Shit! You didn't have to tell them. Yeah, no. But they, Baby Steps is like really bad animation most of the time, but such good acting. Such good writing and such good directing and dramatic pacing, especially I really want to do a what's in a scene at some point about that penultimate match in the last tournament arc.
I think a lot of people understate the value of anime, because when a show like that comes out and it's kind of ugly, a lot of people will say well, I'm just going to read the manga because the manga has better art and you can read it faster and, it won't take as much as your time. And it's like, what you're really understating, though, is how much voice acting can add and how much pacing can add and how much tension there can be when you can control the speed of how the viewer engages with it, Sometimes breezing through it isn't the best way to read it, And I think... oh man, another example would be One Piece. One Piece looks like shit, and I wouldn't advocate watching One Piece because I think there's enough advantages to the manga that it's better to read the manga. But I love watching One Piece movies because the voice actors for the characters are so good for the characters that I want to keep reminding myself what they sound like, so that when I read the manga, I can think about those voices.
I think this video is about to get another 10,000 downvotes because you just said One Piece looks like shit, and a lot of people are gonna.
The anime looks like shit. People cannot deny that. The manga looks amazing, but the anime looks like shit.
The TV anime is very poorly produced. The movies look better.
Go watch movie number 6, directed by fucking guy we're probably gonna mention, Mamoru Hosoda. Phenomenal film. I love it. Big fan. Has every great key animator in it. Hiroyuki Imaishi's in it. It's good shit. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of One Piece. Don't get me wrong. I have one of the biggest videos on my channel is about why One Piece is good, so I'm sure most people know that. But like, yeah, so the point I'm getting to with this, and I realize that everything we've talked about in this podcast has 10 minutes of lead up before we get to the fucking point. But the point I'm getting to is that I understand that you see flaws in this show. You see that you admit to there being plot holes, you admit to there being dumb contrivances, you admit to there being characters who aren't fleshed out. So what about this show is so fucking good to you that you still think it's a 9 out of 10 in spite of all these flaws? Like, what is it that makes up for so much problem in your eyes?
For some, oh god, well, there's a lot. For one thing, I think that the character animation and the character performances are really strong across the board. Even the super fucking hammy evil bad guy teacher who spoilers by the way.
I think it's clear that there's spoilers. We talked about the fucking reveal already. We described the ending already. Why are you saying spoilers now?
Because if I don't say it at some point, people are going to get mad at us.
Oh, Jesus.
But yeah, so like even the hammy and ineptly handled in a lot of ways teacher, the character performances, the way that they're animated, the way that they're voice acted are very, very, very strong. Like when you look at Satoru in the scene with the reveal, which is not part of the what's in a scene that I was talking about, but in that moment when everything is washing over him and he's just got his head bowed down into his seat and he slowly leans back as everything washes over him. That is such a great long shot for creating tension in the viewer, although if you're not emotionally invested in that stage, like you were not, that probably won't work on you.
I would describe myself as barely paying attention, so it's doubly not worked on me.
Yeah, exactly. So you were not, at that point, you weren't invested, and that's fine. Stuff will work on you if you're invested in the show that won't work otherwise. And there are two stumbling blocks for staying invested in the show that I think do break suspension of disbelief, which I will get back to in a moment. But if those don't destroy the show for you...
All right, actually, you know what? I have to rewind, and this is what I was going to start this podcast with, but we went in so many fucking directions that I just let it roll. But, okay. Because, to get there... To get to that point and still have suspension of disbelief, something early on has to catch you. So, like, this is what gets me the most, and where I think the biggest disconnect is between me and everybody else who watched this show, is that I was never hooked. And I think most people were hooked very early, because people were loving the show as of episode 1. So what I really want to know, more so than your, like, overall on the show, like, what was the first thing that got, like, what grabbed you in episode 1 and made you think this is going to be great?
Oh gosh. Satoru and his mom, I guess I would say. The first scene with Satoru talking with the editor at the Shonen Jump equivalent, or wherever the hell he's pitching his manga. Satoru talking with him is a great moment for, like, exploring what this character's about and what his hang-ups are in brief, and also a great explanation of sort of the overall perspective of the manga industry, which is something that comes up in quite a few of my favorite things, like I Am a Hero, for instance, is also about a struggling manga artist who's not just, like, mopey, he's a misanthropic psychopath. He, like, there's this...
So here, I'm gonna try to draw a connection here, and I'm gonna say, because, again, part of this is not just you explaining what could be good about the show, but why you think it's a 9.
Why I think it's... So
I'm gonna go ahead and posit something. I'm gonna armchair psychology you a little, but I feel confident in this. You are deeply experienced in industry, creative industry. And when I say creative industry, I mean, like, I'm a guy who I completely grassroots my whole career. Like, nothing I've done has ever been working for anybody. I decided to be a YouTube guy first and foremost, got all my equipment, started writing. I have no bosses. I have nobody to answer to. I have no publisher. You come from a background of actual games journalism, working for a magazine and writing for professional...
For a website that used to be a magazine
right.
that is complete dog shit.
I mean, that's what magazine means now. I don't think anybody has the illusion that when you say magazine, you mean a physical thing. Webzine.
Unless it's EGM, I get.
Right.
The Escapist is a magazine now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
So something like that, and you've worked under people, and you've worked in an industry, and like you have more emotional resonance with that. I think.
And before even that, I actually worked. I went to school at Vancouver Film School, to where I learned parts of film production in a studio environment, and mostly game design in a studio environment, which is probably the closest industry America and Canada has to how Japanese companies operate. Round the clock, lots of contractors, lots of crunch time. I've covered it from the perspective of I've made stuff. I've covered it from the perspective of actually like going and reporting on things, interviewing people. So I do connect more with people trying to create within an industry and within a system and within a studio environment. I find that fascinating.
I think you also, because this character is a failed manga artist, and I feel like because of your industry experience, you probably have a lot more sympathy for that than I do.
Yeah.
Because, and we talked about this back when we did that first podcast, but like, I didn't get very deep into it because there was 4 of us and we were fucking screaming over each other. And, but a lot of people like shat on me for the fact that I was ragging on the main character for being like a mopey guy who's 29. And I think I said at one point that the fact that he's older than me makes it harder for me to like him. And like, there's a certain type of narrative that is absolutely what I'm biased towards. And if you look at my favorites, I mean, I don't know why I always think that people are going to like study my favorite stuff and figure out things about me.
Because you do it constantly.
Yeah, I guess.
You're like poring over your anime list, drawing connections. You have a closet that's just got like 50 screen caps of anime.
I actually do it with other people. Like
walls.
I've tried to analyze you via your anime list. People don't do that, I guess, other than me. But like, if you look at the stuff I love, like my favorite manga is Bakuman. My favorite movie is Speed Racer. One of my favorite animated films is The Wind Rises. And the connection between all of these is that...
they're all about guys who are really good at what they do.
Yeah, well, they're about guys who are obsessed with what they do, and they don't do anything else. And, like, the idea of failure is never an option. Because that's how I've lived my life, where, like, ever since I was 16, I had, like, a moment where I decided that, like, I was never going to be happy if I wasn't an artist. So I had 2 options. I either had to become a successful artist or I had to kill myself. And I'm not suicidal anymore, and I now know that you can work as not an artist for like a few months and get money and then go back to being an artist. But like, I have no interest in doing anything else other than like working this kind of job, you know. I keep saying artist. I know some people might be like, what you do isn't art, but like my point is creative work. Which, if you don't think it's that, then I don't know what to tell you. That's the kind of job environment it is. But like,
no. We're plagiarists. We're just stealing stuff from Japanese companies.
Obviously, that's why we get so many fucking takedowns on our channel. But but you know, from my perspective, I like the character who never gives up no matter what, who's always fighting, who's like, no matter what happens to them, they can't stop. You know, like like it's impossible. Like they don't know how. And those are my favorite stories. So when you start off a show with a guy who's older
given up.
Yeah, a guy who's older than me and hasn't even reached the level of success that I have doing creative work and just gives up and is like, fuck it, I'm done. Which I don't know if he was going to permanently stay that way, but like he was, you know, he just became this jaded, bitter guy. And like, it wasn't even the fact that he was giving up on his dreams so much as when he talks to Airi for the first time, and he says, they translated this as, is this how millennials talk, you know? And what they really said in the original was like, it was like he said the current...
era.
era.
I don't remember the name of the fucking
Heisei
Japanese emperor. Heisei era. It's the Heisei. Yeah, it's the Heisei era because the previous one was the Showa era, which there's a much better show about this season that you should all be watching. And I say that as someone who loves Erased. Yes. There's a much, but yeah.
He says this line just to finish up. He says this line about Airi, and like, it drove me up the fucking wall because I hate people who talk down to like millennials or people from younger generations or act like they're so hard to understand. The guy's only fucking 29. He's not an old man, you know, even though it's funny because they gave him this voice that's like this deep, distant sounding like older guy voice, but he's not that much older than me. And like, even his fucking voice actor is only 27. So like, but you know,
and Iree's voice actor's older, actually.
Right, and she's, I pointed that out in my video, that she's 2 years older. But the reason that the voice acting bothered me in that scene, and, like, I've brought this up so many times, and, like, people keep telling me it's a nitpick or whatever, but, like, the reason it bothered me is that the character is so painted as this guy is a jaded older guy, but the way that they portray that is give him a voice that sounds completely not like anime, even though the other characters sound like anime. And what I mean by that is that Airi doesn't sound like a 17-year-old. She sounds like a voice actress playing a 17-year-old. You can tell when they hire non-voice actors in a show. It's a complete world of difference. Go watch Karekano or FLCL. Listen to Mamimi. She does not sound like an anime character. The reason that they cast him that way isn't because he's jaded. It's because he's a character who feels out of place, and I said that in my video as well, that I think that was the point, and that's when I segued into that the show just beats you over the head with the point of stuff. But I just really liked that segue because I got to make my fucking voice actor complaint and also talk about other stuff.
Do you not know that it's segue?
I like saying segue, okay?
Okay.
It's just how I read the word, and it's look, man. When you hear the next Procrastinators podcast where we go into a 30-minute screaming debate about pronunciations, you're going to look back on this and laugh. But
So guys, I think clearly Digibro has just proven that he's wrong about things.
Yeah, I am wrong about things, I guess.
And that means Erased is great. No, but
So I'm bothered by how cynical and jaded he is, basically, and I can't relate to him, and I don't like him.
You've taken some time psychoanalyzing me, and I kind of want to roll that back a little bit, because I do like characters who never give up, but I like characters who are different from me and have like a good reason for being the way that they are, and Satoru definitely fits into that because he, as a character, he really, really wants to be a successful artist, and he keeps wanting to be a successful artist, but because of this terrible thing that happened in his past, he has been encouraged to repress parts of himself that mean it's impossible for him to be true to himself, and according to this artist's interpretation, like the writer of this manga, that means that he can never make great art. And his whole character arc of the whole series is really about him becoming true to himself, learning to accept other people and accept his differences with other people, and to be able to get in touch with his own creative spark and become an artist, which is why the emotional payoff of the whole series is seeing Satoru in his own manga studio, which very sweetly his mom is working as their office assistant, which probably pays better than working at a 7-Eleven, which she had to do when he fell into a coma. Though wasn't she like a nurse or something? I have no idea. She had a pretty decent job before she got her shit off track by a child's inability to work out how a seatbelt works. I was under the impression that I was under the impression with the seatbelt thing, like
that it was stuck because he, like, the guy has like a trick seatbelt, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
the
like,
fact that he couldn't get out of it is still stupid because he could just crawl out of the fucking thing.
He could slip out of it. Like, the thing is, it's a trick thing. Obviously, it's a trick that he can't unbuckle it, right. But seatbelts are on, like, not a pulley, but a,
right.
Yeah, they're on a, like a belt loop, so you can just pull it out and then slide out from under it, and it's fine. Right. It's not like it's, like, nailed to the other side.
Yeah.
And they show Satoru leaning forward multiple times, which means that it's got enough slack for him to get out.
And that's something we're definitely going to have to get into, is, like, stuff like that is really, like will break a show for me when, like what they're suggesting dramatically does not match up with what they're showing visually. That kind of stuff really, like, will drive me up the wall. And I feel like when people don't notice, it's like people, again, I mean, suspension of disbelief, there's a reason they call it willing suspension of disbelief, because I think a lot of people are willing to watch that scene and say, well, the idea is that he doesn't get out of the seatbelt because he's stuck. But it's like, the way they're showing that idea is having him, like, clearly have give on this seatbelt. It looks really fucking stupid.
Like, I am not willing to just... That bugs the shit out of me, but I was willing to move past it.
Yeah.
But going back to Satoru's character, I think that you are right in that I do empathize with people who are struggling with the creative industry, because like, my first dream was to be a game designer, and that's a really hard thing to do when you're not a good programmer.
Right.
Like, my strengths lie in writing and video editing and drawing to some extent. And that's not stuff that you can get a career making video games with unless you really buckle down and just force yourself to program, which I kind of hate.
And I'm going to say, like, it's not that I could like a character like Satoru. I don't want to give this impression that, like, all downer characters are, like, fucking on my shit list or something. Like, because when we did that first podcast, people were like, oh, what about Sato from NHK? And I'm like, I love Sato because the whole show is nothing but exploring Sato's psyche. And, like, you really get a strong grasp of how Sato is from, like, the beginning. You know, like, there's the whole first episode is just him sitting in his apartment talking about fucking how he's lost his mind and how he doesn't trust anybody and he can't go outside and he tries to karate chop a bottle and all this shit. And, like, that stuff is super relatable to me. I was a borderline hikikomori when I was in high school. And, like, stuff like thinking, if I karate chop this beer bottle, it's going to make me stronger because I'll be like a great sage. That's the kind of shit that I used to do, you know, because you go so insane trying to get yourself out of depression that you start just doing weird things, like hoping that it'll have some effect because you've read in a book somewhere that you can psychologically change yourself with physical activities, you know.
I have been there. Been there.
So, like, stuff like that connects with me. With Satoru, all I really got out of him before it started with plot stuff was
him
I don't
being
want
an
to do
asshole
manga
to
and
teenagers.
fuck millennials. And then right after that, he, like, saves a kid from a bus. And, like, and what that reminded me of, because, like, I guess that's supposed to make you think, well, he's, I guess, a good guy, right? Because that's what Airi thinks afterwards. Well, he's a good guy. He saved that kid. What a great dude. And to me, all it said was, like, he's an anime protagonist. Of course he saved that kid, you know? Sato would never have saved a kid. Sato was a real guy, you know?
Sato wouldn't have saved a kid, but
he would have felt bad that he didn't. He would have had a whole episode about feeling bad that he didn't save that kid, but then reassuring himself that he couldn't have because he doesn't have time travel powers. He would have actually imagined the scenario from Erased as something he wished he had done, you know? But
and then afterwards he would have, like, slid off his bike and stuck it to Airi.
Right. And so
just done, like, the fucking Akira slide on his little shitty pizza thing, gotten off, walked up to Irie, just started making out with her. Because also, Sato's really into teenagers.
Right.
That was there's an important bit of dialogue early on that made me like Satoru quite a bit more, which is he's not just condescending towards teenagers, he's also like, no, I don't want to fuck somebody who's that much younger than me. That's weird. That's gross. And I was like,
well, she's also underage. Well, maybe not in Japan.
No, she's 18. That's age of consent.
I thought she was 17.
That's 17 is age of consent in most places in Japan. I was watching a Gaijin Goomba video about defending Senran Kagura earlier today, and apparently 17 is the age of consent in Japan.
I actually thought it was 16, but
yeah.
Anyway,
it's 13 some places.
Right.
But yeah. So Satoru.
In other words, lolly's okay. No, so this dude, yeah.
I want to explain a little bit more about like why I'm okay with things that are definitely cliche in a character like, say, Shiro Emiya, who I have slowly grown to despise. That they're okay in Satoru.
See, now you're gonna get the hate comments because people love Shiro now. Apparently, which is so weird to me. Look, when I was coming up in the anime fandom, I never watched Fate Stay Night. All I heard about it was how shit the main character was. All anybody talked about was how Shiro was the worst character ever. How the whole show was like unwatchable because Shiro was so bad. And then all of a sudden, they make Unlimited Blade Works, and I'm going back to watch the old show, and everyone's telling me that Shiro's like the best part of it, and he's the best character. And I gotta say, I watched 7 episodes of Fate Stay Night, and Shiro was my favorite part because he's so fucking stupid that it's amazing.
It's entertaining.
It's really entertaining how stupid he is.
So Shiro...
Like, I actually think he might be canon retarded. Like, I think he might have a mental disability.
So, do you know what the twist is with Shiro?
Yeah, I do. Okay, I don't know if we're supposed to spoil it.
So that's...
Whatever, Shiro's Archer.
That's I think why people like him so much.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it.
And I think Heaven's Feel contributes to that, which, I mean, I'm not gonna fucking play the Fate Stay Night visual novel. I'm sorry, I don't have time for that much expository dialogue in a video game. And Full Metal Ghoul will be mad at me for that because he really likes Fate Stay Night a lot. And I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry for saying this. I love you. You're a good guy. He mods my subreddit. Good guy. But yeah, so oh god, I don't remember why I got very off track. So Satoru, his like formative experiences were he grew up loving superheroes, and he was unable to connect with kids his age, but he was just obsessed with superheroes.
Yeah.
And
see, I'll admit that character detail I like completely forgot. So like that, like it was later in the show they were showing parts like where he was remembering the superhero thing, and I was like, wait, was that a thing? Like I had just completely forgotten that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I just missed that would have made it like more tolerable, because it does make sense that if he's obsessed with heroes, he's gonna grow up to be a hero, and I just didn't catch it at all.
And he would want to make manga too, which is like weird. It's weird because he's depressed about not being a mangaka and not being able to create these superhero stories he wants to create. But he is actually a superhero, and that's a really interesting dynamic for a character. That's a really interesting...
when you put it like that, that is kind of interesting. That he can't write a superhero even though he literally is one.
And
surprised they didn't actually like make that point in the show, like you actually are a superhero,
which is one thing that I like about it, because you talk about it beating you over the head with its cinematography and with some of its sound design choices, something that I just think is straightforward filmmaking of the type that you would see out of Steven Spielberg. Not a fan of you're not a fan of Spielberg.
Well, okay. I haven't even watched like any of his movies. So no.
You haven't watched Indiana Jones?
Actually no, you know what? I love Indiana Jones. Yeah, never mind. That was a good movie.
Yeah, so it's straightforward, accessible filmmaking.
And I like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And I guess I like all the Steven Spielberg movies.
Yes.
They're all good. What a cool guy.
You just 180. Fuck that guy. I love that guy.
No. I don't relate much with like with his style. Like the style of stuff I like
is Kubrick-esque.
No, not
Or-
Kubrick. His is that's exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm big into like I like stuff that is blatant, but is blatant in the way. Okay, I'm a big fan of like Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Shinbo in anime, Hideaki Anno. I like directors who are
you like graphic direction.
yeah,
Not
like stuff that's like really showing you something. I think for me, and I'm thinking about making a video about like why I think Bakemonogatari manages to work, even though, because like after I talked about how Erased was super blatant with its symbolism, I thought about how I actually like Monogatari, even though that show will like the whole fucking
literally
screen
just
becomes
put
a symbol, right?
Yeah, put a card up like this is what.
But
this
I
is.
think what I like about it in that show is that the symbolism isn't necessarily exactly what they're saying. It's more changing the meaning. Like what is being shown on screen changes the meaning of what's being said, as opposed to just reinforcing the meaning. Whereas in Erased, it's usually like you kind of get the point, but then the directing also like really sells the point. Like,
yeah,
hey,
like-
did you notice that everything's fucking red when it's related to violence? I hope you noticed. Did you notice violence is a theme in this show? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, there are red objects. I think that your complaints about the screen tone filter might be a bit petty.
The fucking mom has red eyes, dude. Like, what the hell is that about?
That's
a bit much. It's a bit much.
A lot of people have red eyes. It's like the violent.
She doesn't. Does she even normally have red eyes? I thought they just turned red when she was doing like sadistic shit.
No, like the killer has it. It's all about that.
Right.
It's all about that killer instinct, that violent impulse.
I think if the show was like always like that, like always, because that's another thing with Monogatari is like it's always like out there and weird, and like every time they're doing like a color thing, it's like all over the place, you know.
This connects to something else, which I like the level of surrealism that Erased hits, because Erased is definitely a surrealist thriller, but for somebody who, say, likes Monogatari, it does not go surreal enough, hard enough all the time. It doesn't commit to that, and it almost completely drops it in the present-day scenes, except for the last episode. But
where suddenly and this is another thing that bothers me about it, is that what were we talking about? Because if we're going back to something, I
had one more point that I wanted to make about the direction, which is that I think it's straightforward without necessarily being like, hit you over the head with this is stupid.
I mean, part of why I wrote that into my script is because of your videos.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I would have noticed as much, but also because you made those videos, and then a lot of my stuff I talked about in the video is because I discussed the show with Goat Jesus, who's another anime YouTuber. I don't know how familiar you are with him.
I've seen a couple of his things.
Yeah, he's been watching Erased. He hated it completely.
He hated it, yeah.
And me and him talking about it was part of what got me to finally watch it and make a video about it.
Were you talking shit about me? Were you guys talking shit?
Yeah. He was talking shit about the fact that you broke down those scenes when he thought it was all very basic, but he's really into like art house film, you know, like he likes metaphors that sort of draw you in and make you feel things rather than explicitly saying things. He's more into like I don't know if he's actually a fan of Eraserhead, but that kind of movie, you know.
Yeah, and I can see. For somebody who likes that, I like that kind of stuff too, depending on the thing that I'm watching. Like, I'm a big fan of, I always blank on his name, but the guy who wrote Anomalisa and Charlie Kaufman.
That's probably Goat Jesus' favorite guy too. Like, he's a big Charlie Kaufman fan.
I love his direction, but I also appreciate straightforward stuff.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think I played it up to bother me more than what really bothered me more than anything was the sounds. Like, I didn't care that much about and the red thing was mostly because of the fact that you made that video that was so strong about it. And I really do think that the color correction, and the reason the color correction bothers me in those scenes is because I can get that exact color in Vegas. I know I know how to get it. You know, like, I've done it before when editing videos when I'm trying to get past copyright. I'll throw a quick color correction on a scene to just make it look a little bit different. And the way that those scenes looked to me was like, we deliberately color corrected it red. And yeah, it's scenes that are set at like sunset, but there's only 2 scenes that look like that in the show, and both of them are violent scenes. And it's like everything is red. It's not just that they drew a sunset. If you look at the shadows, you can tell there's a red tint on the shadows, you know. So it's just a color filter put over everything. So it wouldn't have bothered me if they had actually drawn the world to be red. If they had drawn a red world with the sun was so harsh that everything looked like it was drawn red, then it wouldn't have bothered me. But it felt like in post they added a red color correction filter to everything, and
so that shift to red is like they do make everything red when he goes into the tunnel, but it's that video. People are like, oh, red means dead. No shit, Sherlock. Yeah,
right.
Like, it's an obvious piece of symbolism, but the whole point of it is to psychologically prime you to increase the tension of the scene. And that's what I was trying to get at with my video, and I think I succeeded because lots of people enjoyed the video, but there's that contingent of people who are like, well, no shit. And it's like, I fucking know it's obvious that means that, like, maybe I'll go and do a thing about the spider webs next, which appear, and that's a little bit more subtle than the red thing. But the whole point of it isn't to like be a deep symbol. The whole point of it is so that you're seeing this stuff and it's making you get your back up so that the scene works better.
And it's possible I would have completely felt that had I not watched your video a week and a half before watching the show.
Before watching the show, that's so.
I mean, by that point in the show, I was like disengaged to the point that I was literally not paying attention to it. But if assuming that I was a viewer who didn't know anything and was into the show, I can appreciate what you are saying the symbolism does. It's just that the technique used to get it annoys me personally. And
the color filter.
Let me make that clear. I'm not in with the people who are saying like, no shit, red means dead. I don't think that was what my comment was about either. I just kind of was like, I hate the technique they used to make it all red. I like the idea of making everything red for that scene. I just wish it was hand-drawn red.
Yes, and budget is kind of the concern there.
I mean, and they down to that.
They go to hand-drawn blue for after they come out of that tunnel and the sunset is gone, and it like the blue is another thing that
I'll say I think that was a good idea to have it be sunset before the tunnel, then it's red in the tunnel, and then it like harshly changes color when they come out. That's a good trick. I'll give them that.
And like the blue is something that shows up whenever a shift is caused by Satoru's time travel powers that is going to cause a disaster. So that's like, so they have these 2 priming things that like get your back up really hard. And if you're watching the show and not thinking about every scene's cinematography, that's something I feel it worked on me, at least. It worked to get my emotions running. But to me, I feel like the show does a lot of showing without telling in regards to Satoru's superhero obsession and, Kaio's emotional home situation. And it's very blatant showing, but it's not, it's not like people talking in dialogue and saying stuff like, well, Satoru, how does it feel to be a superhero but not be able to write a superhero? Because I would fucking hate that. And I would also hate it if every episode they were bringing back the superhero thing and just instead of just having it come up in dialogue occasionally.
No, it would have been annoying if they brought it up all the time. Yeah.
Like it would. Like the only time it really comes up is when that girl is like super secret hideouts are lame, and Satoru's friend's like, hey, fuck you, secret hideouts are awesome. And it's like, and Satoru's like, whoa, calm down, man. And she's like, hey, yeah, it's just some stupid thing a superhero would do. Hey, fuck you, superheroes are awesome. I like that was.
I don't even remember that scene. That's too late into the show.
Yeah, you had given up.
Out.
But there's
after episode 6, I got up, I went and got some. I went to the store. I got something to eat.
You got a lot of liquor, and
I ate through the rest, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
I started like trying to watch YouTube videos and stuff.
Yeah. But like an example of hitting you over the head with stuff for me comes from Batman versus Superman, by far my most downvoted video of all time.
Oh, really? People don't like that?
People who really like DC. There's like a contingent of people who are just happy that parademons are on screen in a movie.
Kevin Smith said so in his video.
Yeah, like there are people to whom the visual aspect of like these characters are on screen, minus, you know, the fact that Superman and Batman don't look like themselves because of the gray color correction filter that makes everything not have its distinctive colors. Right. But like they're just happy to see a film rendition of all of these nerdy details that they like, and they don't really care that the characters aren't those characters. But I don't want to harp on Batman v Superman too much, except to say that in Batman v Superman, at the beginning, they spend like 15 minutes doing Batman's origin, and in that time, they don't say Thomas Wayne's name once, but they say Martha Wayne's name like 17 times. And then at the end of that movie, when Superman says Martha, they flash back to every single time that they said Martha in the intro.
They did that. Like,
and it's like, oh gosh, I can't remember things for longer than 2 hours. Duh. So that to me is just hitting you over the head with fucking bullshit.
That's a whole other level. That's like it's like a whole new extreme.
That's Zack Snyder for you.
Yeah.
That is but like I think that being straightforward with the meaning of your shots and reinforcing what the characters are thinking and how you shoot your show is a valid and in many cases good way of directing something that makes it honest.
I think if this was a show that I enjoyed, I would have been defending the directing, but the reason that it doesn't work for me is that I think the show feels amazingly rushed. And I don't just mean that in the fact that they obviously cut a lot of content. Man, when I was rewatching the first episode, like, for my editing, I couldn't believe how fast it cuts between stuff. Because it's like, you see him rip up the manga, you see him talk to the editor, and then there's like a 5-second shot of him laying in his house, and then all of a sudden he's out at the pizza place, and then 5 seconds later, his power activates and he saves the kid. And then he's in a hospital. And then he's getting out of the hospital and he's walking with his mom. And then they're eating dinner with Aidi. And then there's this and this. It's like every scene is just like back to back. And there's no time to like get into it. And I think that's why people liked episodes 2, 3, and 4 so much, because they were by far the most methodical.
They slow it down and let you get to know the characters. I
liked episode 2. I thought episode 2 I thought it had interesting ideas. Like, I thought the idea that him being in his child body was like they kind of made it seem like maybe the adult mind and the child body were affecting each other in ways like he was feeling things he wouldn't have felt just because he was in that body. You know?
Someone on Reddit made the greatest cut of Erased, which is they took the scene from episode 11 where he turns to Yashiro and he says, "Yashiro, I've remembered everything." And then they just added in the internal monologue line, "Shit, I said that out loud."
That's pretty good. Yeah, but I like that idea, and I like elements of it, but more importantly, episode 2 felt much more carefully paced, where you have that slow scene of him entering the classroom, and there's that great shot that I talked about in my video where he walks in and he's framed, you know, the obvious symbolism that the fucking windowsill is separating him from the rest of the class. Like, no shit, we got it, but it's a cool shot. And like, you know, there's an amazing animation cut right after that where all the kids are getting into their chairs and the teacher walks in and the camera pans up. Extremely cinematic.
Oh god, such great animation, and like that was like, I really like how they frame the teacher throughout the series, because they really get you into Satoru's headspace of this character everything about how he's filmed, everything about how he enters a shot is just, this guy's sinister, this guy can't be trusted, but he's so good at lying to you and so good at making you want to trust him that in the audience, lots of people were like, I don't want this guy to be the killer, and they were upset about being him being the killer.
Yeah.
And some people attribute that to the mystery failing because there's not enough red herrings, but we'll get to whether or not this is a mystery in a bit.
And for the record, I know I used the word mystery in my in my review of this. I don't give a fuck about genre terms.
Yeah.
Like, I am not the kind of guy who's like, it's not a good enough mystery. I don't even like the genre of mystery.
Yeah.
So, like, I got a lot of people harping on me for calling it a mystery, and they're like, it's not a mystery, it's a crime
including
thriller.
me.
And I'm like, I don't fucking care. Like, I just said the word mystery in the middle of a video. Like, get off of me.
I mean,
I really don't believe in genres that strongly, you know?
Like, I said it in my analysis of episode 2, which a few people have taken me to task on. And
I mean, as of episode 2, there was no reason to think it wouldn't be a mystery.
It wouldn't be a mystery, yeah. And
which is why, and I mean, that's why I think it's fair to be disappointed in the mystery, because the show didn't signpost itself very well that it wasn't going to be one. Like, they made it look like, who's the killer going to be? And then, like, it's not till, like, episode 3 when, like, or episode 4, really, when no one's thinking about it anymore, and you're like, okay, it's now a show about dating an elementary schooler.
Well, no. I mean, that's another thing that I will get to. But yeah, the signpost, like, early on, it works as a thriller and it works as a mystery. And the thing about that is, when you're making a thriller and you're making a mystery, the mystery can be a plot point or a key plot device in a thriller, but you can't make a mystery at the same time as you're making a thriller. They're contradictory genres, because a thriller is all about the audience knowing what is probably going to happen to the protagonist, and knowing that the protagonist's in shit and being like, they've got to get out of this, and the protagonist has to catch up to the audience. And in a mystery, the whole structure is all about the audience catching up to the protagonist. So you can't do both of those things at once. Something's got to give.
Sherlock Holmes is a mystery because Sherlock Holmes figures it out before you do.
Yes, exactly. And Sherlock can work as a thriller in scenes because Sherlock figures it out and you figure it out, and then Watson's in some shit and Sherlock's got to run to save him, and Watson doesn't know he's in some shit yet. But overall, it's a mystery, it's not a thriller. And there's a dichotomy
and
there.
I guess I should also say that, like, when I say, and because I don't care about genre distinctions, I think that's why I come off as, like, I always say I hate mysteries, and then people keep trying to, like, trip me up on it because there's plenty of mystery shows that shows that are considered mysteries that I actually really like, and I'm a huge fan of the Sherlock Holmes movies and what I've seen of the TV show. So, like, clearly I don't dislike mysteries. What I really mean is that I hate, and this applies completely to Erased, and when I call it a mystery, this is really what I mean. I hate the mystery box. Have you heard of this technique?
The J.J. Abrams mystery box.
Yes, the J.J. Abrams mystery box. And I think this is something that applies to a whole lot of shows, not just mysteries, not just thrillers, not just any one genre, but there's a lot of shows that seem to start off by suggesting to you that something interesting is going to happen. And then it's completely reliant, like, whether or not it'll be good is completely reliant on how well they deliver that.
And you've been burned enough times to not trust that at all.
Well, there's a great write-up by a film crit Hulk about the mystery box and why it doesn't work. But, like, because you go into a movie like Star Trek Into Darkness and, like, they build up what's the mystery going to be, and then you find out and you don't give a fuck, you know.
And the mystery only makes sense to people who are going to hate that movie anyway, because it's like, oh, he's Khan. I don't know who Khan is. I'm fine with this. Or I know who Khan is. That's not Khan. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
And oh god. So
I've gone into a lot of shows with that, like, that feeling of this could be great, but it has to be great. And, like, the reason I brought up Steins Gate in my video is that in that show, it sets up, like, hey, there's something weird going on. We don't know what it's going to be.
But it also has characters that you like.
And just great dialogue. Like, I could watch those characters do anything. I don't care. Like, they were so fun to just watch do things that, like, by the time the mystery did happen, like, I had totally forgotten that there was a plot in the show until, like, episode 9 when the big reveal happens and you're like, holy shit, oh my god, what's going on, you know?
Be careful with Steins Gate, because now we're going to get some downvotes. I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How much have you seen?
5 episodes. It was during my period, like, it came out during my period of I wasn't that into anime, and I didn't have a good internet connection to watch
Steins Gate is funny, and this is another thing, and I feel like I have to clarify this. I don't know if this is important to this podcast, but it's important in general that, like, I don't watch current shows, really. I watch the first episodes of current shows, and then I put them on hold forever. So, like, with Steins Gate, when that show came out, I was, like, unbelievably hyped for the first 4 episodes, and no one else was watching it at the time, and I was just like the only guy who gave a fuck. This was like when Crunchyroll was first starting to be a thing, and they were subbing it, and I was like really excited, and no one else seemed to care. And after like 4 episodes, I was like, this is already on my favorites list, and then I just didn't watch it for like a year. So like by the time I finally watched it, everyone had caught on, and everyone was like, this show's amazing, and I'm like, okay, I have to fucking finish Steins Gate, because now I feel like an idiot for not having kept up with it. And then I watched it and it was fucking amazing. But it was really funny because so many people have said of that show that they think it starts off boring and they think it starts off like uninteresting just because it's not clear what the plot is going to be. But like I've never been a plot guy. I've always been like a fun dialogue guy. And like that show had one of the you've already seen this episode. But if you probably forgot this joke. You're probably going to rewatch the show, so apologies if I ruin this joke by explaining it here. But in episode 3, there's a part where the main character and the girl who's always hanging around him are in a washing machine place, laundromat, and they're washing all the clothes for like the place. And he pulls out an anime T-shirt because the big fat guy's like a big otaku, right? And he pulls it out. It's got this anime girl face on it. It's all fucking stretched out and warped. And the girl goes, "Oh no, whatever Chan is melting," or something like that. And Okabe says, "Daru is like the universe, constantly expanding." And I thought that was the funniest shit I've ever heard in a show before. And I was like, this show's perfect. 10 out of 10. It's already sold me. I'm done. Like, that's all you needed. A great joke just from some weird life scenario. But, like, now I love everybody in this show. And I've been using that joke on my fat friends forever. It's classic. Don't be fat around me if you don't want to get made fun of.
Luckily, I'm not fat, and I'm working on staying not fat.
You're very tall, though.
Yeah,
I'll have to work on some tall material for you.
Man, if we like start doing like monthly podcasts or whatever, or even weekly, I'm sure you'll find some shit. I was the butt monkey in my old podcasting crew. So good times. But I don't remember why we got onto Steins Gate, honestly. Steins Gate, you were talking about the mystery box. Yeah. So your comments on the mystery box make me interested to see what you'd think of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Because 10 Cloverfield Lane is...
I've already been spoiled for the ending, so...
Oh, damn.
You have to understand that I am someone who... And this is also part of why the mystery box doesn't work on me. Because I spoil myself for most things. Because, like, I'm firmly of the belief that my like opinion of something is dependent on like the last time I saw it. You know, like if I watch a movie and I think it's great and then I think about it over time and I don't like it anymore and then I watch it again and I confirm I don't like for instance the movie Interstellar. I saw it in theaters. I got really hype after watching it because my brother was super hype after watching it. We talked about it and I was like, it's like a 9 out of 10. And then I discussed it with someone else and I became aware of a lot of things that bothered me. And by the time I saw it again, I was like, this movie's a fucking 4. This movie sucks. You know, like it completely fell apart for me. So to me, like something is only as good as like how it holds up. It has if it doesn't hold up, then it just like and people have said like a movie can be good on the first viewing, and I'm like, yeah, it can be good on the first viewing, but if it's not good on the second viewing, it's not good anymore. It has stopped being good at some point, you know. It has stopped working. And most of my favorite stuff is stuff that gets better every time you see it. Like you keep realizing new things. And even with like mystery style shows, like when I was watching Steins Gate, there was a bunch of stuff in the first episode, because I rewatched the first episode for that Erased video. There's a bunch of stuff in there that I hadn't known what it was the first time, and then I rewatched it and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. Like, I get it now because I know how this show goes. And so it was even cooler because I got to see those like setup pieces, and I love that kind of shit. But like, if I can spoil myself for something and it's no longer good, like I watch it and I'm spoiled and now it's boring because it's all just building up to one point, then that really bores me. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case with Erased, because Erased really, as you said, it's not really a mystery. It spends most of its time...
It's not a mystery box show,
about
really.
character building, you know.
Like, it reveals stuff that I watched it, like... I watched the first 3 episodes of that show 3 or 4 times in editing my video together to talk about them. And I do think that prior episodes of that show do improve upon future viewings, because you pick up on stuff and you're like, oh, Kaio is touching his hand, and that's like a character moment for Satoru.
Yeah.
Where there's this complete disconnect between his body and his mind that's very worrying to him and also hilarious. But then there's also like Kaio is connecting with another human being, which is an important character moment for her. But then there's also the logical point, which that she's doing this so that she knows what size his hands are for when she needs mittens.
I will
for
say,
him.
the only thing in your video that did convince me it was really clever was that. Like, that part, I was like, okay, that is really good. Like, that's a great idea. And it's going to come back later.
And that was a good cut, too. I think them cutting together, and then she's already away from him. Because man, when I was in like grade 8, we were playing some kind of tag where you had to hold hands with people, and I held hands with the girl I had a crush on. And I ran for like a full 20 seconds after the game ended. Because I was just like all up inside this one space of my body. And I'm not talking about my hand touching that hand. Like, I do feel like I'm on Cloverfield Lane now in my brain, and I shouldn't be because I keep getting distracted.
Erased.
Yeah,
so, all right,
Erased.
let me tell you about the moment that this show stopped being, like, I stopped caring. It was at the very beginning of episode 3. Mm-hmm. It was, because, like I said, I liked episod 2, and I did make a mistake in not rewatching episodes 1 and 2 before watching the rest of the show. Yeah. Not necessarily, mostly because I forgot about that superhero aspect of the character. And also, like, there was a whole part in my script I had to change because I had, like, for some reason I thought that when it showed the, like, film reel mass thing, the girl who leapt through time thing, I had thought it showed that when he leapt through time, and that was not the case at all. So, had to write a whole part of my script out of that, out for that. But, like, so episode 2, the pacing
that's how he
gets
sees time travel, I think.
Right. The episode 2, the pacing gets a bit more methodical. We establish, like, who he is, what's going on with his powers, where he is. He's with his mom, we find out about Kaio, we find out she's being abused, right? Episode 3 starts off with, like, an ice skating race.
Yes.
That serves no purpose.
That serves, so
like,
it serves.
Like, what it does is the scene is that he's wondering if this is going to affect anything. Like it's kind of like he can't figure out what's, like, am I supposed to lose? Am I supposed to win? What's going to change history, or am I just repeating history? And it turns out he is repeating history. But like, what kind of got me here, and what happened throughout this episode, and I see there's a lot of points I make in my video that I just said like one sentence about it, and I didn't really explain myself. And the reason we're doing this is because neither one of us wants to make a 3-hour video about this show.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, people keep coming to us like, but how could you say that? And it's like, look, you either take the 13-minute video that doesn't get into every fucking detail and you just take my word for it that I have reasons, or we have to do something enormous, and I don't have time for that. I have other shit to do, and you have other shit to do.
Yeah, I'm going to do the OP, maybe the ED, and that's it.
Yeah.
But that's
why this
be
had
me
to happen
done.
for us to fucking explain ourselves. But like,
so the ice skating race. So like it does serve a few different plot points because it sets up a the conflict for part of the episode, which is that he had just immediately told Kaio that he wouldn't lie to her,
Right,
and then
that's right.
he throws this race. It also shows that at this stage in his character development, Satoru doesn't understand other people. He doesn't get that this guy who's really competitive about ice skating and is going full out, wants him to go full out too.
I can't believe that was like what bothered me about that scene was I can't believe that kid like picked up on him not like that he threw the race. Like a fucking 10-year-old can tell that he slipped. Like I mean, even I couldn't tell by what means he flubbed the race. You know, like it didn't look like he slowed down really. Like it didn't really like other than the fact that his character did in fact slow down. Like he didn't do anything with his legs or move or change anything to like suggest.
There was a cut.
Like why would they pick up on it? Why did everyone know that he threw the race? You know,
there was a cut where he shifted his feet and stopped moving a little as efficiently. But I think that scene may have been a victim of the show's sometimes too fast editing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that sometimes the editing is too fast, but I can forgive and even like that because when it slows down, when you get those long drawn out scenes in the car where he's like coming to that slow realization, or when you get those slow, quiet moments where they're just taking in the beauty of nature, which holy shit, the end of episode 3 blew me away with just the sheer beauty of that scene.
It's funny you say that, but like, because we're getting up to that episode 3. I feel like episode 3 might be the linchpin for me, and like getting to how I became distant from this, because like the sense I got while watching that episode was that like, it felt like this was the point where like the dramatic tension just kind of stopped. Like episode 1 and episode 2 is like this. It is a thriller. It's like, where is this going to go? How am I going to get out of this? And then in episode 3, it just kind of becomes like a slice of life show. Like you still have the looming idea of like, we got to save my mom. But like nothing is there reminding you that like, hey, your mom is dead. You got to figure this out in 3 days, other than him saying like, oh, I only have 3 days left. Like there's no like feeling of like this dread. Like,
but that's the point. At that point, Satoru's been lured into a false sense of security.
And that's what bothers me though, is that like why does he allow himself to do that? Like how stupid is he?
Because the first this is clearly established in the first episode, which again you didn't maybe you didn't remember until the end of the thing, but in the very first episode, he is fixated on this one point in time where if he had just gone and talked to Kaio, she would have been okay. And he had convinced himself that was all he had to do. So that's all he does. And he thinks he solved the problem. And he thinks that by making friends with Hinazuki, everything's going to be on the right path and everything's going to be okay.
He seems so stupid to me for thinking that.
Satoru is not as smart maybe as he should be for the protagonist of a thriller,
but he's not. I think it's because he's 29, and like I don't know. Look, I might be a little bit of like an ageist or something. And this is something I've brought up a lot in both previous reviews, that it bothers me how smart the kids are, and it bothers me how not smart he is. Because
Satoru, so he's not a smart character. Kaio is also not smart. Kaio is just.
But she's. What bothers me about Kaio,
and jaded.
Like I liked Kaio more. Like, well, okay, I won't say I liked her more because I never really liked her. But throughout the show, after episode 2, she felt like a kid to me. Yes. In episode 2, she explains so much about herself in words that I can't picture a kid saying. Because as a kid, you do have an understanding of yourself and like how you think you are, but it's not correct. It's not like a psychological analysis of yourself. You just kind of know how you relate to other people. And the way that Kaio describes herself and describes Satoru is so spot on, and then the fact that he just like it like learns from it, like he hears her say that and he's like, that is how I am, I never realized. And I'm like, you're 29, you should be teaching her how she is. How do you not understand yourself and a fucking 9-year-old does, you know?
Well, it's one aspect of her character that she understands, which is because she's consciously faking. Like, she's constantly consciously pretending that nothing's wrong.
Do you describe yourself as that if you're doing it? Like, I don't...
She describes Satoru as that because she sees the same thing in him, because it's something that's going on with both of them.
I think the only Kaio scene that I actually like is it's either in episode 3 or 4. I think it's in 3. It's after Satoru stands up and tells the girl, like, fuck you, she wouldn't do that about the stealing the money thing. Yeah. And then they're going to take the trash out.
By the way, that character animation where she's like on the verge of tears, that little girl, great animation.
Yeah, I love watching little girls cry. It really gets me off.
Too.
So they're carrying the trash out, and like Kaio just kind of describes to him that this girl is like a stuck-up bitch, and so she threw her mechanical pencil out the window one time, and they've been fighting ever since. And like
that's such a kid thing.
That's a kid thing. That felt like something. If a kid was trying to describe to me why they didn't like somebody, that's how they would describe it. Like, she was acting mean, so I threw her things, and now I've decided I don't like her. You know, like that was very childish. Describing that you're like putting on a facade so that people can't understand your true emotions, that's not something a kid describes. You know, not to say that they're not doing it, but I don't think they can describe it. And I brought up in my review Figure 17, which I'm gonna do a video about this character archetype soon. But like, I'm really interested in that show because in it the main character is this girl who is very shy, and she doesn't like her dad moves her to a new place, and she feels guilty because she was responsible or her mom like not miscarriage. Her mom died while she was being born. And so she kind of feels like it's her fault, and her dad wants to move out to Hokkaido from Tokyo, and like she doesn't feel like she can really argue with him because she feels like she robbed him of his wife, you know. Yeah. But she doesn't like explain any of this. We get it. Like, because of the way that the scenes are shown where he's like where the only dialogue she has about it is she asks him, "Was it my fault Mom died?" You know.
Here's
and throughout the show, well, here's the thing. Like, she goes to this new school, and no one really, like, the kids don't necessarily, like, bully her, but no one really talks to her, and she's just awkward. But she never describes herself. And a lot of the show is just, like, long silences. Like, they'll just have a kid stand next to her, and they'll just be quiet for a while. And then one kid will get really frustrated, and he'll, like, throw something on the ground and run off. And, like, it's because they can't describe themselves. Like, they don't have the words for it. You understand that they're feeling those emotions because the show is, like, showing you those emotions. But they can't tell you what they are because they don't get it. Because they don't have those words. So, like, there's a part where she has to, like, hide something from her dad. And she's just like, I'm not doing anything, you know. But there's no inner monologue. There's no part where she's like, oh, I better not tell him this. It's just like you see the awkward kid thing. And I love that. And I'm not saying that every show would have to do that. But, like, I really... Like, nothing takes me out of a show more than, like, kids acting too old or just being... able to say things that I don't think they should be able to say.
So I think I can't be sure because I don't speak Japanese so good, but I feel like maybe part of the problem with that line of dialogue
is the translation. It could sound more specific in English. Yeah, and I will say that Japanese has a lot more, like, because Japanese language, a lot of stuff that sounds like the way they translate it into English, when in Japanese it's often like sound effects that they're talking, you know, like fua meaning like fluffy, but then when they translate it into English it's like something different because it wouldn't make sense if they were saying a sound effect. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what extent it is the translation. Maybe it would sound more childish in Japanese. Yeah. But yeah, it's just the fact that she's so sure of herself in that explanation.
There's also the point that Irie first said those words, and the reason that Satoru really understands it is because he's hearing it in a more basic way from a kid.
Right.
But then the thing about Kaio is, like, she says a lot of stuff confidently that's absolute bullshit. Because she is putting up a jaded facade.
I think that's when she gets better throughout the show. I think everything after episode 2 treats her much more like a kid.
So she's got... What I took away from that is she has this one point of clarity about herself because she's spent a lot of time thinking about it due to her home situation.
Right.
And she is sort of prone to speaking her mind and just saying stuff that may or may not be bullshit. Like, she's constantly playing up the jaded, I'm smarter than you, what are you, an idiot? Like, she says that like 50 times to Satoru because that's a defense mechanism for her to do the whole Baka thing.
It's trying to be,
And when she grows up, her true self is a much sweeter and more honest, but less self-assured person.
Well, I don't know. You're kind of assuming a lot of that. She really only has one line of dialogue.
She's got one scene, but it comes across in the mannerisms of the actress and how it's framed and a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm just saying that, like, it's reading a lot into a few images.
And it's unfortunate that you don't like Kaio so much because...
Well, I want to talk about that next because to me, Kaio felt very easy. Like, Kaio to me felt like if I wanted to create something that was just a sympathetic doll...
You would write a Clementine? You'd write a Clementine into a story?
I am not sure what that is.
You haven't played Walking Dead?
No, I have not played Walking Dead.
Okay.
I know who Clementine is, though. I know.
You would write an Ellie.
Yeah. Ellie's the one from The Last of Us, right?
Yes. Yeah. God damn it, man. Play some video games.
I've played The Last of Us. I don't remember. It's been 3 years.
You'd write an Elizabeth into your story?
God. I would never write an Elizabeth into anything. In this context.
The surrogate daughter character
that's
has
exactly what I'm
definitely been played up a lot.
Well, she's easy to me because what she actually reminds me of, and this is the thing, I made this point in my Erased video that I think this show is a little bit pretentious, just in the fact, and maybe it's not even pretentious, maybe this is just how it looks to me or how other people talk about it, because so many people are describing Erased as like, well, at least it's not moe shit. At least it's not a harem show. And I'm like, is it that different from, like, Clannad? Which I guess people love Clannad. But, like, those old Key shows were always about, like, the main character was trying to save all these girls who were very cute and had very tragic stories and were fucking idiots, usually. And they always had one thing that they said all the time, and it usually was not suggested that there was anything sexual there. Because if you actually played Key visual novels, which were erotic games, but it was usually like, at some random moment, there's a sex scene that's very brief and not well drawn, and people didn't play them for that. They played them for the story, you know, and that's why Clannad didn't even have sex scenes in it. But, like... There's like a very chaste romance with a girl who's just kind of...
the pronunciation is killing me.
Is it chaste? I don't care. When have you ever heard someone say it out loud? Like, Jesus Christ.
All the time!
I've probably heard it and not realized it was that word because I've been reading it chaste for so long.
Chaste, you mean.
Chaste, but whichever one. I don't fucking care about pronunciation. You'll have to wait for my other podcast for me to rant about that. So like, that's a thing that happens a lot. And with Kaio, like, she has all the hallmarks of those characters. She has a very, like, depressing reality she lives in, which is that she gets abused. But it's very simple. It's her mom is a fucking monster. Like, that's her mom's entire personality is, I want to beat the shit out of kids because it's fun. Like, she literally smiles about it. Like,
her mom is getting catharsis for having been beaten by her husband.
Right.
That's like which is, I will give you, it's super simple.
The way that they portray her is like she is just a monster. Like, I've never even seen that level of like grinning abuse besides maybe in Higurashi, where like the person is so excited to beat up a kid in a show, you know? And I don't particularly feel that strongly about this point, which is why I made it very briefly in my video, that I don't think Kaio necessarily acts like an abuse victim. And I really pulled that more from Goat Jesus, because he was saying that he has been a victim of abuse, and he was like completely like offended with the way that they portrayed her. Because he was saying that like, as an abuse victim, you don't really understand why it's happening to you, and you don't necessarily understand how to deal with it or how to relate to it. And a lot of people who are abused become violent. That's all they know. You know, my brother has a friend who like, his dad always, beat his mom, and then he now fucking smacks around his girlfriend, and like we all had to stop talking to him and shit, because we were like, you're a disgusting person. He's completely unapologetic about it, but it's like, I get why he thinks that way, because his dad's been doing it his whole fucking life and beating him and his brother, you know. So like, this kid gets beat up his whole life. Of course he's gonna become a fucking violent madman, because that's the world he's lived in. And like, I don't think that victims of abuse typically become like these really intelligent together kids who totally seem to understand their situation like Kaio does.
She's closed off and suicidal.
Yeah, but she is capable of understanding that. Like, she gets why she feels that way, kind of. You know, she's like, I'm in an abusive household, you know.
Well, because her mom is really over the top about it,
right.
But then
and I'm not saying it's indefensible. I'm just saying that I don't think that portraying abuse this way comments on abuse. And I'm not saying the show has to. It's not a show necessarily about abuse, but I don't think that's an interesting topic in the context of this show. I think it's something that's there, but it's just there as a plot device, not so much as like a theme, you know?
I can agree with you there. Like, it only the fact that she defends her mom and doesn't, and like still tries to convince her not to do bad things, does play into that sort of Stockholm syndrome thing a little. But I agree that it doesn't comment on abuse as well as it could.
And the main reason I'm bringing this up so strongly is that I've had comments on my videos who are like mad at me for suggesting that this is not a good portrayal of abuse. But all of those comments start off with like, you don't know anything about abuse, or how do you know about it? Have you been abused? And I'm like, what makes you all assume I don't know anything about this? Like, just because I wrote one line into my video that I don't think this is a good portrayal of it, why does that suggest to you that I know nothing about abuse? When I've had friends who've been abused, and I've studied psychology to some degree. I just don't think this is like a very accurate portrayal. I'm not saying it's terrible, but
different people experience it differently, for sure.
And that's fair to say. You know?
Like, I was in an abusive relationship for a while, and I closed myself off. So I can see that aspect of how Kaio responds to that. But I can also see why Goat Jesus would be upset with that, especially if the show was presenting this is how somebody should react to this, because that would be offensive.
And I think I think it bothered him mostly, not so much because of the portrayal of abuse, but that she was an abused character, but all she really ends up being is just a cute girl who the show is about Satoru saving the cute girl. And that was sort of how I felt about her in the long run, where I didn't feel invested in her as a character. I felt she was, because of the way that the show constantly will like suggest things about like, oh, he's realizing he might have a crush on her even though he's 29 years old. And like, they do that joke a lot of times, you know, like there's a lot of moments.
They do it twice.
No, they do it like in episode 2, they do it in episode 3. There's hints of it in episode 4 where he's like kind of like, it's always kind of suggested that he's like falling for her. And then there's a whole scene when she comes to his house and he's like gulping, he's like staring at her while she's getting her hair dried and stuff. And he's like, it's like really suggestive that he's got a crush on her in this reality. And that's why so many people are saying that he got cucked when he was hooked up with somebody else. I mean, fucking stupid.
That complaint bothers the shit out of me, and I want to touch on the thing because it's his teenage, like it's his going into puberty hormones that are making him feel that way, and it's like that completely makes sense to me that this character who's like, I'm not gonna fuck a teenager, that's not appealing to me, is definitely not a pedophile.
Yeah, and I don't think he is. I don't think the show is trying to suggest that, and that's why I think people complaining about him getting cucked, it's like you want the show to be worse. Like suggesting that he got cucked would be suggesting that he was in love with Kaio, and if you believe that, then you think this show is fucking stupid.
Yeah, and he's happy for Kaio that she got married and had a kid. His response to seeing her have a kid is tears of joy.
On the other side of the coin, the reason that I'm accusing this show of not being that different from other anime is that, for Satoru, it makes sense, and he totally is not actually wanting to fuck her, right? Mm-hmm. But for the audience, what we experience is, look at cute girl. Don't you feel like if you were in Satoru's shoes, you'd totally have a crush on her? Isn't this really adorable, seeing these two kids be kind of like together? You know, like all the promotional art for the show is like adorable pictures of them like huddled together. I know some people who actually went into the show thinking it was going to be an adorable romance show and not what it is. So like, I feel like it really plays up this idea, like even if it wasn't something Satoru actually wanted, the show really presents them as like, look at the cute couple of kids, and because Kaio doesn't have that much personality, and she keeps repeating that fucking meme line that she always says, "What are you, stupid?" And that's such a moe girl thing to do, because all the key shows, all the girls had those. They all had taglines, the thing that they said all the time. And so when I saw that, and there's the whole part where she's in the bath with the mom, and she's like cleaning her off, and I'm just like, this is like, I'm not saying it's lolicon fan service, but it's playing into your desire to have a Kaio, whether as a Dotaru or as a, I wish when I was a little boy I had a girl this cute that I could save. She's being abused, I get to rescue her, I get to save her from her bad situation, you know. It's wish fulfillment.
To a certain point, it is kind of wish fulfillment, a superhero escapist fantasy. Although the one thing about that bath scene that I appreciated is that the only person who was really sexualized in it was Satoru's hot as fuck mom.
Yeah, Satoru's mom is fucking hot. I think we can all agree on that.
She is except for my MILF.
When that first episode came out, I was talking about how hot she was, and my brother Victor was like, really? And I was like, what? You don't think she's hot? Apparently he didn't like the lips. I love the lips. She's
got them Makoto Kusanagi lips.
Yeah, she's got them DSLs.
Yeah, them. But so. Oh God, DS, Jesus! that like dropped
high school,
and I was like, oh God. See, sometimes I think that you're a really mature and intelligent guy.
No, his mom is hot, but that's the other thing, though. His mom. And don't get me wrong, sometimes this stuff works on me, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can talk a big game about how much like Kaio bothers me for this or that reason, and you have to keep in mind,
you like K-On!
No, K-On's a fucking amazing show. That's
okay, I'm not
giving. That is not here. You haven't seen it. I don't want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah.
K-On! Is a fucking phenomenal, beautifully written masterpiece. And I will hear nothing about it.
Oh, okay. But I don't want to distract too hard. I just do want to get one point in about the moe portrayal of Kaio.
Yeah.
Which is that is sort of the default way now in Japan of engendering like sympathy for a female character is to give her those moe aspects. Although they do show Kaio fending for herself a couple times, like when the guy shows up at the bus and opens the door and she's like, is that Satoru? And then she realizes, oh, he didn't knock. That's not Satoru. I better stay quiet. Like, she's smart enough to fend for herself in certain scenarios.
Right.
But this is, I think, probably a failing of Ito's, that at this point in his career, having done Sword Art Online, he just sometimes automatically does.
Do you think he's been poisoned by Sword Art Online, and now he doesn't know how to write good characters anymore, work on them?
He doesn't know how to like put a girl on screen and not make her cute. which
Yeah,
is something
it's
Hosoda can still do. But yeah, I'll let you continue.
No,
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess and I'm not necessarily saying I think Kaio is a terrible character or anything. That's not my goal here. I just think she's easy. And as a viewer, I'm not interested in that. And again, what I'm trying to paint here with Erased is that that nothing grabs me, that no one thing interests me. And I will say that I like Satoru's mom, but I also think she's really easy. But what I want to say is that like easy can work for me. It's obviously a matter of personal taste.
Yes.
I like his mom because she's hot and she kicks ass and she could like I get the image of her as like
his mind.
Yeah, she's like, well, she doesn't age. She's always like cool and hot. I think she probably smokes. Does she smoke? I don't remember.
Wait, dude,
she drinks.
Dude,
drinking is cool.
Do you think Satoru's mom is a full body cyborg?
Oh man, that'd be cool.
That would
make sense.
That would make the whole show like
secretly the whole time. That would be very bizarre. But yeah, she doesn't age. She drinks a lot. I love any girl who drinks. I like older women. I like girls who cook and girls who care a lot about you. So she's like perfect for me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, she's perfect for everybody. Satoru's mom has been written to be perfect. She has no flaws. She's like a monster of perfection.
Well,
all she cares so much about her son that she does all kinds of incredibly badass things to protect him and do all these things for him.
But
she fucking takes care of his atrophied body for fucking 15 years. She's perfect. But
the flip side of that is she has the mom flaw of being really nosy and getting all up in his business.
Whatever. I'm okay with that. I like women who are all up in my business.
I do too. I
want women to be obsessed with me, okay? That's what I'm attracted to. And I'm not even exaggerating.
You heard it here first, ladies. Digibro is looking for a stalker.
That's how my ex-girlfriend happened. She was actually a stalker of my content. But anyway... which maybe means it's not a good idea to hook up with them. But Satoru's mom is like perfect, and I think Kaio is also perfect. And I think I don't mind with Satoru's mom because she's an archetype that I get behind. But I also see it as like, okay, she's just fucking badass mom. Like they didn't write her to be like a character so much as like a thing. She is just the badass mom. Like. And Kaio is just the cute girl you have to save. And funnily enough, I think Airi has the most potential as a character, and they completely cut her out, you know?
Yeah, they cut down a lot of this. So, like, you may enjoy reading the manga more, because Airi does get fleshed out considerably. And
I definitely think I would like the manga more, but I also still think that this is so not my type of story that there's no reason to go out of my way to read it. You know?
That's fair. Like, Airi...
Because I'm a slow reader and I don't read a lot of manga, so... What
I like about Airi is that she's not necessarily an easy character. And I like the fact that she's somebody who Satoru is very emotionally attached to and wants a connection with, but only as a friend. And that's... Like she's a very important friend to him, but he doesn't want to fuck her.
Although the ending of the show kind of makes it out like he got her though.
No, that ending. It's weird because they rewrite most of the ending, but then they keep that one beat from the manga. And that ending is supposed to be that even though he is gone and he's lost all of these things and his life has changed so dramatically, that friendship that he had with her transcends this time leap. And the whole show really is about believing in your friends and falling back on them, which can be taken as a trite message. But I like...
Don't get me wrong, I love Power of Friendship shows. Again, this one lost me early, so it doesn't...
Yeah,
it didn't affect me, but I appreciate that message. It does not bother me that it's about the power of friendship, because I fucking love One Piece and shows like that.
So, like, I feel like even though the show does not really have a fully coherent plot, and there are points in the story where things just don't make sense properly, or things are left out, and this is amplified in the anime where they cut out things. I feel like the story hits the emotional beats that it needs to hit. As somebody who cares about the characters, obviously, if you don't care about the characters from their introduction and they don't get you invested, then by the end of it...
How do you feel about that character who's like the kid whose entire personality is that he's insanely fucking smart?
Kenya?
Yeah.
I mean, Kenya's not like... Kenya's bookish. Kenya has, like, interesting flaws, though, in that he's smarter than his schoolmates, and open-minded, which is part of why he's smart as a child.
Right.
But he's not naturally prone to taking on roles of leadership, and that often gets thrust upon him because he's smart. So there's an interesting character in there that he was more fleshed out than I read by a mile, but it seems to me, and I haven't read the whole manga, so I can't be sure, but it seems to me like there were a few beats that they left out, because at the end of the manga, one of the big emotional things is he sends Satoru this letter that he's basically saying to him, look, like, we looked up to you. You were our hero. Yeah. And we've spent the entirety of the last 15 years trying to catch up to you. So even though you've been in this coma, you've been part of all our lives, and we love you. And that's a really good... Yeah. Power of friendship moment.
Which is, I mean, and I will say that when I watched, because they did something like that in the show where they talk to him after he wakes up, and I kind of felt like, did they really care that much about him? Like, they were only friends with him for like a week, weren't they?
Well, they were friends with him throughout his entire childhood, but they really, really didn't, and he also helped, like, 3 different couples hook up. That's something that you remember.
And I guess I guess it comes down a little bit to the small town mentality. These people all knew each other their whole lives. This is something I can't easily relate to because I have moved 20 times in my life. I don't remember any of my friends from childhood. I remember nothing about them. Like, anybody who I was, like, I mean, I do remember that I was friends with them and, like, why I was friends with them, but I don't think anyone who I met before age, like, 17 has influenced my current self at all, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, it was a little weird for me, like, to think that a kid who they knew for, like, a very short period of time in their childhood would still be important to them when they've had, like, entire lives that were probably about something totally different, you know?
Well, that's another thing. They do drift apart in the original timeline, like, naturally, but because of this thing that happens to Satoru, who has meant so much to all of them, it brings them together, and it's not something that the parents can whitewash with them. They end up being closer. So, I
guess I don't mind it. I just wasn't sold on it, and that's another thing where the show is too fast. Like, if this show was 26 episodes and you really, like, felt this connection between the characters and, like, it was like, wow, they've done so much together, you know, not like one time they went into a hideout and it was kind of cool, you know.
If they had 26 episodes to make this series, which, like, to me, I'm very understanding that sometimes the money's just not there for that. Right. But if they had 26 episodes to make this series sing, I think it would have been a 10 out of 10 with the direction that they have on board for it.
Well, I want to get back to that direction again.
Yeah.
Yes. Something I wanted to talk about is that, like, this. So we've talked about, like, the symbolism that the show is very straightforward. The straightforwardness doesn't bother me too much. I think it's heavy-handed in some places. I would prefer not to have the color correction sunsets. Maybe that's a budgetary thing. I mean, it's kind of forgivable. I would prefer not to have the fucking loud sound effects. That I don't forgive, but whatever.
That's fair.
That's like a pretty, like, even I'll admit it's a fairly pedantic complaint. I don't think it's the kind of, when people tell me that, like, that I'm nitpicking and this shouldn't factor into my overall score, I'm like, well, then what should? Like, if it bothered me, it bothered me. Fuck off, you know? Just because it didn't bother you doesn't mean it's not allowed to bother me.
Guys, you're on Digibro's channel.
Why do you not want nitpicking? This is what he fucking does.
Yeah, you pay me to do this. I don't know why you're here if you don't want it. Which is obviously because people come from other places, and it's not. I don't think my subscribers are complaining about this for the most part.
You're mad at a guy who spent 13. You spent longer than the Asterisk War is picking apart the Asterisk War for nitpicking. I feel like you may be at the wrong place for that complaint.
But anyways, the sound bothers me. But what another thing is that, like, and more than anything, it's the pacing. And I'll agree, if this show was spaced out and given a lot of breathing room, with the directing it has, I think it would be a much better show. I don't think the directing is bad in this show by any means, but I do think that there are signs that even with all that time and all that money, it still wouldn't be masterfully directed. And the biggest one for me is just how, like, there's a lot of, like, visual cues that have no cohesion to them. And I pointed this out in the written part of my video, like, because there was, like, stuff pointed out on screen. I don't know if you paused and read all the text blurbs in the video.
Not all of them. I don't really do that with most videos.
Right. I don't usually, unless I don't usually do them either, but, like, it was because I only really picked up on this while I was editing, because I was looking at all the footage again, and every time there's, like, a flashback or a memory, it's like they used a different technique for it every time. Like, there's a part where Satoru is explaining something from the past, and it's presented as, like, a film reel, and then there's parts where it's using film reels to represent, like, what memories are and stuff, like, the big thing of film reels, which, like, is called back to in the opening theme because they sit in front of a theater, but I don't really know what the theme of film has to do with the show. Like, other than the fact that Ayuri's a photographer, it's never brought up that film has anything to do with shit. And
that was
and I'd be
interesting.
I'd be willing to accept it on some level, but then there's also a part, and this is all in episode 1. I found all this while editing episode 1 clips for this video. There's a part where he has a memory, and it's him and his mom, and it's just like a really brief scene, but all they did to it was they put a white vignette around it.
Okay, so here's like the aspect rate. Here's where the aspect ratio comes in. So when he's flashing back as an adult to the past as a child, he has his adult perspective, so it's 16:9 widescreen.
Right.
And when he has a flashback as a child, it's anamorphic widescreen because he's got the child mindset is affecting him. So that makes sense. The film reel thing was
stretch.
It was Ito's way, like, it's not a symbol from the original manga. Right. It's just Ito's way of contextualizing the flow of time and how it can get tangled up and how there's all these different timelines and how Satoru perceives that in a visually understandable way.
Right. But if they did that all the time, then it would be fine. But like I said, there's a part where there's a memory where it's a white vignette and it's full color. It's just like him and his mom, and he's a kid, and there's a little white vignette around the screen. And then there's another
him
part
flashing back as an adult. So
but then there's another flashback that he has where everything is in, like, desaturated, and it's all, like, black and white, and there's, like, an effect on it, but there's no film thing, there's no white thing.
So this is all in episode 1, right?
Yeah.
So this is all those. So in those, I think that the color filters are meant to represent, in a broad sense, his emotional perspective on those things.
I don't know.
It's a little ham-handed.
It just feels very inconsistent to me. It felt like every time they had a memory, they then came up with what was going to look good for that memory to show that it's a memory, rather than at the beginning of the show saying, all right, when we do memories, it'll be this. Some shows will be like, hey, if we're doing a memory scene, it's going to be black and white. Every memory scene be black and white. But then some of them are black and white. Some of them are film reels. Some of them are white outlines and stuff. And I think this is a pervasive thing throughout the show where there's lots of symbolism, but, like, For instance, where the hell did the spider's thread thing come from? Like,
a whole chapter that they cut from the manga that details.
So it makes sense in the manga, but they didn't cut it out of the anime.
He briefly explains in the anime the one part of that thing where he talks about the spider's thread, which is he drowned a bunch of hamsters in a jar of alcohol, and the one that survived, he could see the spider's thread from an old Japanese legend about the spider Buddha dangling down a single thread to a guy who did one kind thing to a spider in hell, but then it snaps when he tries to kick away all of the people climbing up after him. So that's
is that wasn't one of the Aoi Bungaku shorts about that?
Yes, I think so, yeah. And so his whole thing is he kills people who he can see this thread over, and it's given the supernatural and surreal nature of the series, it's entirely possible that that's actually like a thing, that these characters are in some kind of hell and are being offered a way up.
God, I hope not.
And so
I just felt like this show had a lot of like mixed metaphors, and there wasn't like a cohesive ethos of symbolism, and maybe that's I could even attribute that. I think that's a problem, maybe not a problem, but I think that's also true of Mamoru Hosoda to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's someone who's ever been very careful about metaphor usage,
his metaphors.
Making it
absolutely
all
not.
You know,
like that's something that what's his name? Araki, I think, the guy who directed
Tetsudo
Death
Araki.
Note. Yeah. That's something he's a little bit better for, because he just makes everything biblical all the time.
Right.
And you know, I think that the film reel thing to Ito, it was just like he wanted to make a visually interesting and easy to understand way of seeing this.
But that's the thing, though.
Just a
you
sec.
just put
just
it
a sec.
exactly into words why it bothers me.
But just a sec, because there is one consistent thing about it. The flashbacks with the white the film reel effect on them are Satoru remembering other timelines or points where the timeline changed.
Okay, I'll give you that is probably true. Based
on
my memory.
Yeah. So the film reel thing is him seeing these different timelines, and Ito went as far as this is a visually consistent way of him wanting to do this, but if he really wanted to nail that, like, honestly, the best visual metaphor for that would probably have been some kind of manga page thing, because he's obsessed with manga.
And that would have been great, because it would have connected to the character and not been random.
And if he wanted to do this, it probably would have been better to change Satoru's personality to he wants to be an anime director, and he is
just a filmmaker at all. Yeah.
I
mean, I understand they probably wanted to stay somewhat true to the source material, but I mean, you've changed enough as it is.
Yeah,
that's a common change in anime, to make a manga thing into an anime thing, like like kind of like Ore no Imoto, to pull a totally random example, but like in the original novels, it was like about her getting this light novel written, and then in the anime she had already written it and she was getting an anime done out of it. But like, you know, it's because it's easier to make stuff about a visual medium in a show and make it interesting than it is to make it about a print medium, you know, where again, like you said, if they were going to keep him as a manga artist, it would have made sense to try to replicate print media in the show somehow.
Like comic panels or something, and it's like, it's definitely, there's also like an obvious Hosoda influence on that effect. Yeah. Like it's like, okay, I've seen this in every single Hosoda movie.
Right.
That's obviously something that he wanted to bring into this show, probably as something that is easy to be like, oh, this is like a Mamoru Hosoda movie. I like it more now. And and you know what? Fucking worked for me. I love Mamoru Hosoda.
Yes.
When I played Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, the fact that the digital world in that looks like Mamoru Hosoda's digital world instantly gives me a boner, and I don't care it's not Mamoru Hosoda.
Yeah.
But that's like,
I think we should. I felt like once I went to your My Anime List page today that you're so ashamed of because it's incomplete. But
Yeah.
I go there and like number 2 and 3 in your top 5 favorite things were like The Girl Who
I
Left Through
haven't
Time and Summer
organized it
Wars.
properly, but The Girl Who Leapt Through Time and Summer Wars I love those movies to death.
And I'm a huge fan of Summer Wars, so
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
I'm
not that into Hosoda's other work, but
I cannot wait for The Girl Who Leapt Through Time Blu-ray. I'm excited.
that
Funimation,
fucking
give
huge,
me money,
like,
please.
pack with like 8 DVDs in it. Like
I have the huge pack with the DVDs. I now want the huge pack with the Blu-rays.
I see.
Funimation, please give me money. Just send it to Vancouver. I'll find it. Don't worry about it. Just, yeah. So, like, I definitely feel that there's some stuff in the show that Ito did just because, and they didn't go all the way on it. And maybe not just because, but because it needed to work in an anime, and they didn't fully connect that metaphor together. There's stuff in the ending for sure, like the whole thing ends with him meeting Irie, and Irie is sidelined to the connective tissue between all the bits that we care about with Kaio in the anime. So ending on Irie feels weird. It really probably should have ended on I don't know. I feel like they just ended there because that's the ending of the manga, and it's very hard to end the story that they ended while also giving emotional closure.
It's kind of a clusterfuck because they cut so much of the manga. It's like you can't just do that and expect it to be the same.
So, like, in terms of
Would
metaphorical cohesion, it doesn't hold up, but or it doesn't completely hold up. But in terms of the emotional through line of the series, I feel like it does.
Do you think that the show would have been better if they changed more from the manga than they did?
I do. But at the same time, if they had done that, I feel like fans would have been angry. And
fans are angry anyways because they cut out 4 volumes of material. So
yes, and that's
they should have maybe took more risk.
I think they should have taken more risks. I think they should have changed a lot more about the story. But given the other thing about being in Japan, if you're a successful manga artist and somebody is adapting your manga into an anime, like if you're really successful like that, you can tell them to fuck off if they want to change something.
Right.
Like, you have to get the permission of the original creator to be able to make fundamental changes like that.
Go watch the second half of Shirobako. It was all about this.
They may have been. I would obviously love Shirobako probably more than any other anime.
Have you not seen Shirobako?
No,
I haven't. What the fuck are you doing?
Why am I talking to you right now?
It's the best show of the fucking decade. It's amazing. It's godly.
Oh man, Rakugo is pretty godly too, but that's not...
Dude, Shirobako is another realm.
Yeah,
it's like unbelievable. Have you seen any of it yet?
I have seen the opening a few dozen times and I need to, I know for a fact that I need to watch it. I want to watch it. I have been trying to make space to watch it, but my patrons voted for me to do the Death Note openings, and that means I have to watch all of Death Note.
I know I've been trying to get you to watch K-On!
No, Shirobako,
honestly,
I have to.
Fuck K-On!, watch Shirobako.
I know. I know I will love it. And I'm not resistant to watching it at all. It's just a matter of finding time.
I need to watch it 5 more times. I haven't watched it enough.
Oh God, where did we go from?
I don't know, and I don't care. I'm
you're
incensed.
You're incensed. But yeah, so I do think that if they had been able to change the story more and maybe even take out Irie entirely, and find a different way of connecting those plot points together, I do feel like it would have been stronger. I have the same fundamental complaint about Scott Pilgrim, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, but that movie absolutely should have used the original ending where he ends up with knives instead of with Ramona, because they don't have enough time in that
I don't
movie.
even remember that that's how the comic ended. Was that how the comic ended?
The comic ended, they end up together. Ramona and Scott end up together.
Okay.
And when the comic came out, they were like, oh, well, fans are going to be mad if we don't have him end up with Ramona. But the thing is that in like a 2-hour movie, you simply do not have enough time to take Ramona from being a self-destructive, toxic bitch to an actually likable and interesting and nuanced love interest. And Scott, having found the power of self-respect, should absolutely have ended up with the girl who loves him and actually respects him, but that is...
Besides the point.
Yeah, that's
we can
besides
talk
the
about Scott Pilgrim some other time, which I am a very big fan of both the comic and movie. Although I completely agree with you that the movie is like... all of its biggest problems are that it tries to be the comic too much and doesn't have the characters for it.
And that movie is my favorite movie of all time. So we will. I love Edgar Wright. Something fierce.
He's great. I love all his movies. I have podcasts about all his movies actually on my After Dark channel. I doubt they're good. They were made a long time ago. But.
Maybe we can update them at some point. But
I'd have to reread Scott Pilgrim because I would rather do a podcast about the comic because I've never talked about it and I'm a huge fan of it.
Ooh, that would be a fun. Anyway, we're coming up with ideas in the middle of a podcast that we
hyping our audience for things that might never happen.
You're getting inside baseball look at us rambling about just what we want to do. But yeah, so Erased, I do feel like it drops the ball in terms of plot continuity a lot of the time. But in terms of character continuity for the characters that count, I think that it makes Satoru work, it makes Kaio work, it makes Satoru's friends work, it makes Satoru's mom work, and it simplifies it simplifies Kaio's mom and it simplifies Yashiro a little too much, but they still work as threats, which is mostly what they need to be. And then, while I do agree with you that the character archetypes that they use for Kaio and Satoru's mom are easy, they still work really fucking hard to make you empathize with those characters. Like, my favorite scenes in the entire show, like the scene from episode 2, I like very strongly. The scene from episode 10, I think, is a very good example of execution of tension. I don't know if it's necessarily one of my favorite scenes, but I do like stuff like the heater being turned up all the way into the red. That's like taking it to the next level in terms of stuff you might miss. But my favorite scenes are the ones about connecting emotionally with either Satoru or Kaio. And there's that scene in the park, and then there's the scene at the Christmas tree in episode 3, which is just fucking beautiful. And
my reaction to that scene was, wait, how did we get here already? Because it happened, they were like leaving the school, and then all of a sudden they had wolves running around them, and he was like, this is something that happened to me and nobody believed me, and I was like, oh, okay. And then they were in front of a tree, and I was like, what's happening?
It's very fast. I agree that it's very fast. I was on board for the fast editing at that point, and but they also do make a lot of like interesting nonlinear cuts. Like, I love that cut where his friend pushes him and then suddenly he's like on the riverbank and he doesn't know what's going on. And
I can't deny that. It's a good transition.
That's good in a lot of ways. But my absolute favorite scene in the entire anime, and this is something that I've tweeted about before, is at the end of episode 8 when Hinazuki wakes up and there's only a few words of just people saying good morning, and she comes to the table and she sees her breakfast, and we see from her perspective she blinks, and then it's just like a cup, I think it's a cup of noodles first, and then she blinks again and it's just one thing of toast, and she blinks again and it's just some fucking money to go get some food for herself, and then it's that cut to her in the park eating alone, and it pulls back. First it pulls back to the exact same angle of her looking down at the food as she was in before, which creates this mental continuity that's really good, strong visual storytelling. She's sitting in the park eating this shitty food, and then we just pull back to her, and she breaks down crying. And the acting performance on that is spot on. The animation of her just feeling the full weight of how bad her life was up to this point, and really understanding for the first time that she was actually, like, abused hardcore. And just feeling this overwhelming love from Satoru and from his mom, that it's so sad and so potently connects with just that emotional core of the series, which is what I always loved it for. Like, I like the aspects of nostalgia and, like, going back to childhood. I think that that's an appealing thing. But the one thing that really always got me was these characters.
See,
wanting to see them find this catharsis, and that's Kaio's moment of catharsis that turns her into this sweet mom that we see at the end of the series.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful scene, and the fact that it can well up so many emotions in me as a viewer without killing somebody, without making somebody say goodbye forever, with just this simple everyday thing. That's powerful. That's good visual storytelling.
It's funny, because I didn't like that scene, but I totally get why you do. And I don't think it's a bad scene in terms of, like, writing and everything. But what would have made that scene work for me? There's two different ways that it would have worked. Way number one would have just been she just started crying. She walked in, she saw the food, she just starts crying. Because I already get it. I know what her life has been like. I've seen it fucking literally beaten into my head throughout the show. And I would have been like, yeah, that's how it would be, you know. The even better way would be if all of those flashback moments were not there, but they were things we had seen throughout the show. If through the whole show we always saw Kaio eating shitty, cheap food, and then this was the moment. Because that's the thing, like, what we know about her is that she's been beaten and that her home situation sucks. We never had it established specifically that she doesn't get fed. And so it feels like now all of a sudden we're learning this aspect of her, of, like, all these meals that were shitty or missed out on or just left for her. And it's like all of that at once. And so, like, I feel like the context of why she's crying, which I would have understood that she was crying no matter what, whether they showed all that shit or not, like, because I already know her life is shit. And, you know, I know how believe me, like, the quickest way to get me to feel something is with food, because I'm, like, obsessed with food. And there's actually, this is like a trend in anime to such an extent that I've been meaning for, like, 10 years to do some kind of compilation for it, but it would take too much effort. That anime characters eat then cry. It's, if you want the perfect example that you've probably all seen, Spirited Away. There's the part where Haku takes Chihiro out into the middle of the field, and Chihiro's already started to forget her name, and he asks her to remember it, and then he gives her a piece of bread, and she starts eating the bread, and then she just starts bawling, like, and it's just it's a weird anime thing that when characters, like, need to let something out, it's as soon as they start eating that they'll do it. And you'll start noticing this all the fucking time now that I've put it in your head, if you didn't already. But
well, in this scene she cries then eats.
Yeah,
that's
it's
totally
it's
different.
interesting that she cries before eating, but, like, that's the, like, I get that, and I totally, like, when she saw the food, I was expecting her to cry. Like, when the way that scene was presented, it was obvious that was going to happen. But then when it showed all those other scenes, I was like, well, I don't need to know that. I already know. And I wish I had known this before. Like, I wish it was something, because then it would feel really clever, right? Like, they didn't have to show you, but if you had seen her eating shitty meals and then you saw her come in front of a nice one, you'd be like, oh, I know that she's had all these shitty meals and now she gets this nice, oh, Kaio, you made it, you know? Yeah. So, like, I'm not saying it's a bad scene, but I just wish it was
work
that.
for you. I really like the way that they do it, because to me, it hasn't been a big detail of showing her life, but it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
And the first time we see it is the first time that she's really thinking about what those shitty meals mean.
Yeah.
And what they, like, really, really considering how awful that aspect of her life has been and how awful her mother has been to her. And that, I think, would be lost if there wasn't any kind of flashback. And that aside, I think that the cuts between her eyes blinking as she's fighting back tears are beautiful. That's beautiful cuts. Just visual cinema, like, as far as cinematography goes, that whole thing from her waking up, the way that the breakfast table is pushed off to the side and we're focusing on her face as she comes up, and we see the breakfast as she sees the breakfast. And when I say the breakfast, it suddenly sounds a lot less dramatic.
No, man, I'm completely on board. You don't understand. Yeah. I mean, I'm not big into breakfast food. Maybe that's why I didn't connect with the scene as much. I was like, it had to be breakfast.
If it was lunch.
If it was lunch, oh, man, you'd be all on me.
If it was
I'd be crying my eyes out.
If it was a nice bento with a few egg rolls in it, then...
I'm not that into egg rolls. But
not into egg rolls?
If it was like some nice chicken or something. Like some meat.
Some karage. Some nice karage. Maybe some teriyaki.
This sounds like I'm joking, but I'm actually not. Like, I will become more receptive to scenes that have food that I want to eat. Like, the hungrier a show makes me, the more I emotionally resonate with it. So
Shokugeki no Soma.
Oh, man. That show had me at hello. At hello. As soon as the first cooking scene, I was just like, my boner was through the fucking roof,
I had a boner for that series the whole way through, and not once from the fan service.
I still haven't finished it yet, because I'm a terrible person. I watched like half, and I haven't seen the second half yet.
It ends on a really shitty cliffhanger, but
I don't care. It'll probably get a second season, right?
Oh, it is getting a second season, I think, like very soon.
JC staff are pretty good about that. Yeah. They did like 70-something episodes of Bakuman, so...
Good for them.
Holding out hope.
Fingers crossed. But so the food doesn't do it for you. I understand, and I can see
it's breakfast, but otherwise it would have been perfect.
Yeah, I can see your perspective of like wanting it to, like, for me.
And keep in mind again that all of this, it always comes back to the suspension of disbelief thing, because if I was into it, I wouldn't have thought about that. It wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have been dissecting the scene in my head, because I'm so bored with the show that I just have to dissect everything because it's the only way to get me through it, you know? Like, that's what brings about that mindset. So
part of that's the way that you experience the show, like not watching it and then binging on it. I don't think
I binge every show.
Yeah,
so
that's I don't think it's as binge friendly a series as some other things. Like that's
the thing. That kind of, I can't, like, there's no distinction for me with that. Like, I have to watch things all at once, or else I will like it less. Like, I have never enjoyed a series more watching it weekly, because I'll forget about it. Because I get into too many other things, and like, when I get into something, I obsessively get into it. So if I watch a show all at once, then I like really heightened care about every episode. And if I don't, then I won't. And I do think it was a mistake not to rewatch the first 2 episodes before watching the rest. I think that would have helped a little bit, because I guess mostly because those were the 2 best episodes, or episode 2 was the best episode at least. So like, had I felt the connection of episode 2, maybe then 3 and 4 would have done more for me, as opposed to me just kind of feeling like, oh, this show, it's happening, you know, like, here's more. But
I think episode 8's the best episode, but only if you're invested that way up to that point. But yeah, like, I can definitely see where you're coming from, in that, like, you weren't as invested in the characters as I was from the beginning, and then you skip the first 2 episodes. And on top of that, I do think that it's not a very binge-friendly series. I think that and for me, kind of prefer series that I can watch week to week and have a complete experience with an episode that ends leaving me thinking about what's going to happen next, but also gives me some time to digest what I just watched. And I don't really have that problem with American television. I think it's something about reading subtitles that makes me want to process it more. Like,
it's interesting because I have literally never once watched every episode of an anime that week. Like, the closest I've ever come, because I tried to for years. I tried to be an episodic blogger because that's what like all the big blogs were back in the day. You know, I've been blogging since 2007, and like I kept trying, and I'd get a few episodes in, and I'd just fall off the wagon. And the one season that I managed to like cover 2 shows all the way through was Fate Zero and Bento, which were both airing at like the end of 2011. But even then, there was like a couple weeks where I had to catch up, you know. It's just impossible for me. The only show that I've ever kept up to week by week that was like a TV show was My Little Pony, when I was writing about it because it was my job. And don't Emmy, it's a good show. It was a good show. It's not anymore.
I wasn't adding you. I was just going, yeah. I was going, yeah. I'm. You are way too defensive of your ponies.
I don't even like it anymore, so I can't like get too defensive.
You can like Steven Universe now. That's the
Steven Universe is pretty great. But Rick and Morty is the other one I was going to say. I actually watched all of season 2, like the night that it aired.
Yeah, Morty. I really enjoy sitting down, you know, watching Rick and Morty.
It's really hard to keep up with the current show. I don't know if I can do it every week, Rick.
Rick, I don't, you know,
Morty is abysmal.
I gotta take a lot of time. My Morty's good. I'm dry. I'm like dry as fuck in my throat right now.
All right, let me get to another. Let's get back to Erased. I have another complaint I want to raise. This is something that it only bothered me a little bit throughout the show, but it really bothered me in the last episode. I really hate, in anime in general, this is like one of my biggest pet peeves in anime, is esoteric dialogue that characters act like means something. I guess like Batman v Superman dialogue is a good way to put it, where they talk in these very heavy-handed metaphors that don't really mean anything, but they act like it does. And in the whole scene where Satoru is like talking to the bad guy about like everything, it was just like you've been waiting all this time and you don't feel fulfilled, but now you can feel fulfilled, and now this and that, and then there's all these like metaphorical weird ways of speaking, and I hate that stuff. I can't stand when characters like try to make stuff sound really cool and it's not like a way that people talk, you know. Yeah, that shit drives me crazy.
I guess it doesn't bother me as much because I spend a lot of time trying to come up with good metaphors for what I think.
I think I would call it Chunibyo speak. Like, the way that Kuroneko talks in Oreimo, where, like, everything's a metaphor and everything is like, I am the knight, you know, like, kind of dialogue.
That scene in the car has a bit of that, and it has a lot of that
scene too.
It has a lot of that added in with, this is my true form. Fuck you, whoever translated that way. Yeah. That's like, So, oh man, part of my viewing experience with watching something subtitled is like listening to the Japanese and using the limited amount of Japanese I understand to try to figure out what they're actually saying compared to, but yeah, so I
guess how I'd put it is I really like it when characters are, if they have an ideology, I want it to be like upfront. Like, I like Urobuchi Gen as a writer because his characters like have a philosophy that they're like all about, and they explain it.
Great mouthpieces. Mouthpieces.
Yeah, he writes characters who are like, this is what I stand for, but what they stand for is something that has like real world tangible meaning, even if it's an abstract idea. Like, you know, I stand for society's order, you know, like Akane will explain what the law is and what it means to her in a way that like that makes sense and is like, yeah, this is how people act and this is why I want to feel this way. And that's a very like a grown-up adult way of thinking and talking, of being able to say like, this is what I stand for, this is what I want the world to become, like that kind of dialogue. And then anime has a lot of these things where teenagers will talk about how like like, I don't want to use the meaning of friendship as the cliche because I believe in the power of friendship. But
you're on board with Undertale.
Yeah, that one's fine. I think that one.
You're on board with Homestuck. I mean, shit. Yeah,
Homestuck's not about the power of friendship. Homestuck's about
I have
everything.
no idea what Homestuck's about because I haven't read it.
It's hard to have an idea what it's about without reading it because it's about everything at some point. Like. It's so fucking long, and there's so much to it.
It's Andrew Hussey's improvisational essay about shit.
If you say so. You haven't read it.
I read Problem Sleuth. I know how it works.
Problem Sleuth is not the same animal, but not relevant. I hate when the characters are like, I have to protect you because I have to protect what I care about, and the world is this, and if we don't do that, then the world's gonna fall. It's hard for me to explain this because the way that these lines are written doesn't make sense. So I'm like trying to apply a like actual worldview to it, and realizing that what I'm complaining about is not a worldview, but like explaining something in a way that's very hammy and like isn't really describing any meaningful thing. It's not a it's more like a feeling that the character has, but they're describing it like it means something.
They're going overly poetic.
Yeah,
like how Dexter talks about everything.
Which Dexter?
Dexter the murderer, not Dexter the.
I haven't watched Dexter.
God damn it!
I don't watch live action shows, dude. It's not a thing I do. Except Community.
Oh man, I gotta educate you on some good live action TV at some point, and you gotta educate me on K-On!
Yeah. Well, every live action show that anyone recommends, there's always like 5 seasons that are complete shit. Like with Dexter, it's always like season 2, season 5, none of the rest, like.
No, I would not recommend Dexter. I just assume people have seen at least season 1.
No, I don't watch TV. I don't have cable.
Breaking Bad's good all the way through.
It just doesn't seem like my type of show.
Have you heard about Breaking Bad? I am very invested in Breaking Bad and The Wire.
The biggest reason that it's hard for me to get into live action shows is that they're all fucking depressing. Like all the good ones are just depressing.
The Flash isn't. The Flash is. Just
is it good? It's one of those CW shows, right?
Yeah, it's the best CW show by a wide margin.
Anyway. Off topic.
Yeah.
I don't like esoteric dialogue. I like it when characters are more clear. It's hard for me to explain. There's been times, like the number one example I could think of when this really put me off. Have you ever seen the anime Gun X Sword?
No.
Gun X Sword is a show.
That sounds like the most generic anime in the history of anime.
It was a show that was basically trying to be Trigun and Cowboy Bebop combined. And it was directed by the guy who did Code Geass. What's his name? Taniguchi Goro. It's by far the worst thing he's directed. But, it's a pretty fun episodic story, but then towards the end, it's like all the good guys team up and they're all trying to beat these bad guys. And the bad guys in this show, the bad guys want to destroy the world and reform it because they think that humans are like a disease and we're polluting the world and the world deserves to be reborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
The main character's reasons for stopping them are like, you are just wrong, and you're wrong because people have the will and we believe and we'll make things right. And the whole time all I was thinking was the bad guys have way better reasoning here.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, by the end of the show, wanted the bad guys to win because I felt like they were right. Because they were saying real stuff about here's the problems with the world and what we can do to change it. And the main characters were like, no, you're wrong because people inherently have power. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? That means nothing. So that's what I'm trying to get at here. That kind of dialogue is kind of how I felt in the last episode when they had that big confrontation and Satoru was talking down at him about his basically psychoanalyzing him with
yeah,
in
the
barely
last
any evidence.
In the last episode, his whole you need me alive because you
I was
can't...
like, where are you getting this from? You know,
that where they're getting that from is the TV writers needed a way to end it without the basically 6 or so episodes worth of time in the future that they would have needed to actually,
as I understand
tie
it,
up
the
all the manga
manga
plots.
ends with them falling off of a drawbridge, or not a drawbridge, like a rickety
a rope bridge.
Yeah.
So in the manga, in the future in the manga, he is like the sketchy wanderer guy who was picking up the kid, and not the like suited up, very professional looking bad guy that we see in the...
So a totally different character.
Almost a totally different character. He had a scruffy ass beard. He looked a lot like you, actually. Digibro, where were you the last time this child was kidnapped?
I wasn't even born in the time when this takes place.
But yeah, so he is watching Satsu.
What? This is supposed to be the early 90s, or when was it?
The ending of it's like 2006. The beginning is 1998.
Okay.
So he's in this situation.
Wait, what? That's not 15 years.
That's 19 years.
You said 1998 to 2006.
1988.
Okay, that's what you meant.
Yeah. I think it's 19 years. It's somewhere around there. Maybe 2007. Anyway, yeah, so there is a whole bunch of plot development with Irie's little sister, who's basically just there to be like, hey, another cute girl you got to protect in the show.
Right.
And yeah, I
very
agree.
out of nowhere in the show. It was like, what the fuck? Who is this, and why do we care? By the way, he said this confused the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure I got the answer. I wasn't paying enough attention at the very end when it was doing the montage of everything, because the bad guy caught Satoru and he said, I put like poison in her IV drip and she's gonna die in this amount of time if you don't tell me the truth. And then Satoru stays silent, and then the bad guy says, well, it's too late. And I was like, oh, did she die? And did she? I didn't pay attention in the ending. Did she die? Did the little girl die?
No, she was fine. She was fine.
Why was how did they get? Did they inform? Maybe he told them beforehand.
Yeah, no, he had it all planned out beforehand.
Okay, that's why.
The one thing that I think
so the guy thought he had killed the girl, but he hadn't.
Yeah.
They already knew. Right?
Yeah,
because they had the safety trampoline. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
The one thing that I think does work about that ending is them being there with the safety trampoline to catch him. Like, I mean, it doesn't really make sense.
It's hilarious that the guy was dangling him from a ledge and didn't notice any of that.
No, because that's why he wheeled himself backwards, so that he would have to be hanging off of that gate to hold him, and he wouldn't see it until he was already off the edge. And also so that he would be in position for
it's a very conveniently laid out roof.
It
the
is.
Fact that was something Goat Jesus was complaining about. He's like, oh, hey, a hospital that just has a gate that opens on the roof off the roof.
Look, it's Japan. They have a booming industry for suicides. Don't worry about it.
Like, the whole reason they have gates on the roofs of buildings is to prevent suicides. Yeah. And they have a door you can just open to
it's like it's the Japanese equivalent of wheelchair access. People want to kill themselves.
I'm sorry. That's amazing.
I'm trying not to crack up too, or we're gonna go. We're gonna go off the rails here, or. Through the rails, I guess, would be the correct thing. So like the one thing that I do feel worked about that, because it connects to the fundamental theme of the show, which is trust your friends, put your faith in them, and let them help you out. Because the whole reason that Satoru fails in his first thing is A, he takes it for granted that Hinazuki's going to be fine just because he does the one thing that he thought he could do, and B, because he tries to do it all on his own. And like the whole story is about him learning to trust his friends, so having them be there at the end works. And that separates him from Yashiro, for Yashiro to do that weirdly religious image where he's like, I get it now, which Yashiro's character was a little bit botched towards the end. But the thing that really bothers me about that scene is, like, if you fell off of the roof of a hospital while in a wheelchair and you landed in a trampoline, you would break every bone in your body still, because the wheelchair would just it would get all mangled up inside you, and there is no way he was strong enough to toss that wheelchair off to the side. But again, that's not as dumb as the fucking seatbelt thing, and if I could get past the seatbelt thing, I'm fine. I'm like, there.
All right, so we're gonna.
Yeah.
I think I've said all of my complaints. Again, I can't go through this show with a fine-tooth comb and pick out everything because, A, I lost interest and stopped paying attention at some point.
Yes.
And B, I have no interest in watching the show again or dedicating a month of my life to fucking writing a 3-hour thesis on it, which is why I wrote a 13-minute video. But now that we've had time to air our grievances, maybe people can more deeply understand. You know, it's funny because I feel like this in some ways is the better video, but the other one is the one that's tightly edited and will get 100,000 views and I can mark for patronage, whereas this is the 3-hour one that maybe 20,000 people will watch. So if you want to understand the politics of YouTube, if you want these big 3-hour podcasts that take a lot of time, get more people to watch them and care about them and find them to be worth paying for.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Maybe you could just take all this audio, split it up, and force the Devu to work around the clock for the next couple months.
No, thank you. Oh, God, that editing would be chaos.
He's got to make real videos. There's people who do stuff
like that. There are people who make, like, podcast and then they set footage to it, but I always find those completely boring, so I expect you to tab over. I don't expect you to be staring at the screen this whole time. This podcast is long enough, you'd have to use the whole fucking show. It's 3 hours. The show's only like 4.
If, like, you know, when I do rambly stuff like this, I just take the trailer and I loop it a few times, and then it's like, that's all I gotta do.
Yeah, for 3 hours. It'll be, you'll see that trailer like 500 times. I don't actually know how many.
Yeah, OPED trailer, and that's about it. And then it'll get taken down for copyright claims too, because...
No, this is just gonna be a fucking solid picture of Satoru's face. Like, that's all I need.
And hopefully you'll be able to download this if you want to go to the gym and, like, listen to it while you're on a treadmill.
It's called YouTube to MP3.
I'll like if you give me the MP3, I'll upload it to the Dropbox so that you can. Yeah.
It's no big deal,
So, because you know I.
But yeah, well, I've raised all my complaints. I want to know if you have anything more to say. Like, is there any more stuff that you loved about this show that you don't feel like you've gotten to express or that people might not understand?
Man, I can't even fully remember everything that I've said in the last 3 hours. But I think I've mostly covered everything. I think that, I've covered the difference between a thriller and a mystery, and yeah, like I now understand why you just fell completely out with this series, and
ordinarily, like I've said, in the past, I would not have written a video about this, knowing that I don't care about it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and there was once a time I did this. I did a video on Zanko no Terror when that came out, which I had a very similar reaction to. In that case, I loved the first 2 episodes, and I thought it completely went downhill. But the way I approached the show was that I had heard people telling me that it gets really bad. So I watched it under the mindset that it gets really bad, and then I wrote a video that was like assuming everyone thought it was really bad. And the reaction to it was pretty negative because people were like, well, I didn't think it was bad, you know?
Yeah.
And then Demolition D did a video about Aldenoa Zero, and he basically made the same points I made, but without managing to be insulting to anybody, and it was just a great video. So I actually hid mine. I hid the Zanko no Terror video. And this erased video has a lot of the same problems, but I wasn't as assumptive on the audience, and I just really wanted to write about it because my fans want me to do more negative content, where I've deliberately avoided watching shows I don't like and talking about them because it's so hard to make people understand why you don't like something if you don't talk about it for 3 hours and talk about everything, when really the main core idea is that I didn't get the appeal. And I say that at the start of my video. The first thing I said was like, I never understood what was supposed to be so impressive about this show in the first place, you know? And that's really... That's the main point. I never got what was impressive about it. And like you've explained what you find impressive, and I understand why you find it that way, but it still doesn't impress me, you know?
Yeah, you understand it academically, but not like experientially. And that's fine. You know, as long as you're not being an asshole about it, that's what matters.
Yeah. Which apparently I am being an asshole about it, because a lot of comments were like, "You're an asshole." And I'm like, okay, posted a video on my own channel about my own opinions that none of you had to watch, and I'm an asshole. That's another thing I'd like to bring home. You don't have to watch a video called "Erased was never that good" if you don't think you're gonna enjoy it. The reason the title is that is so you can go, I know what this video's gonna be about. So like, maybe if you think that video's gonna piss you off, don't watch it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think people are accusing you of being an asshole at this point by association with people who agree with you who are assholes. Not to name names.
No, most of the people who actually know about that guy are big fans of him and love that I am on, quote unquote, on his side. Incidentally, if you know who we're talking about, fuck that guy. I hate that guy. Stop implying that I would ever be friends with him, please. It's kind of disgusting. Yeah,
I'm on the same page, and stop. I've muted all comment threads related to anything there. I said my piece.
Yeah.
I'm done. And I feel like that is safely buried at the end of 3 hours of podcast. And
no, they'll still find it.
Oh yeah, because he has no life and he just follows. Anyway, yeah. So like, I understand now your perspective coming into Erased and why you didn't like it, and I do feel like I've expressed what I like about the show, and to an extent, maybe what I value in filmmaking, that I think is very good about this. Because to me, I obviously I prefer it when a story makes sense logically from beginning to end, and there's no big gaping holes in the plot or the order of events or how things happen. But those things not being 100% consistent, except unless it's in something that's actually trying to be a mystery, like Braves of the Six Flowers, then it will bug the shit out of me. But those things don't bother me as much as a failure to create characters who sort of seem like they live outside the screen.
Right.
Which
definitely, I'm with you there. The kind of character who bothers me the most is the one that doesn't seem to exist in their world. And I would agree that this show does, I think, particularly, oddly enough, Kaio and Satoru's mom are kind of the most natural feeling characters. Satoru too, I guess, because, I mean, his whole thing is that he's displaced, so feeling at home in the world wouldn't really match his character.
And then...
But they definitely all have lives, and they do things, and they're not just in the story.
And... yeah, there are a lot of side characters like Misato, who's I probably butchered her name, who's just a bitch to she's not just a bitch. She's got some shit going on, and there's those gossipy girls in class, and there's the skating kid who's got that competitive edge, and even Satoru's group of friends. You can tell that they've all got something going on beyond the screen, and that's that. Even
the kid with the fucking ice race, like that kid. He's an ice racer, like he does a thing. Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think that is worth praise of this show. Something I have not mentioned about it, but I do think is worthy of praise because I highly value that characteristic in media myself.
Yeah, and that's like that I think first and foremost, making me feel like your world really exists. And that's not, for some people that's down to details. Like, some people really want to know that midichlorians make the Force happen.
Does anybody want to know that? Does anybody want to know that?
George Lucas wanted to know it, and
I guess he did.
Yeah. And like, some people really want to know exactly how Satoru's time travel powers work, but to me, it's just like, this is obviously a story written in a world that makes the assumption that there's some kind of deity and some kind of supernatural force guiding things in some way.
Right.
Like, making that assumption, can I buy into this is a place where real people live and interact with each other? And that, I think that the show absolutely nails. I think that the show nails evoking emotion, like feeling of dread, feeling of wonder, feeling of nostalgia through how it's made. And it doesn't necessarily give you those thoughtful, contemplative shots that you find in, say, something like Steins Gate or Ghost in the Shell, that really make you consider ideas. And you're an ideas guy. I am an ideas guy, but like I
would say that if you would consider yourself, if you're gonna say I'm an idea guy, you're an emotional guy. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's that you don't like ideas or that I don't like emotions. Anime can make me cry. I love K-On! Because it makes me cry. But I also love K-On! Because there's like 36 episodes and all of them are about something different. Yeah. And all of them introduce some new element of the characters or the world. And it
for
feels
you to
extremely
consider.
Alive and interesting. And
and
it's less of an idea show and more of an emotional show for me, really. But like...
the emotions connect with you better because it's throwing ideas at you. Yeah. And probably Shirobako, like, again, haven't seen enough of it to
Shirobako is
judge.
a sheer ideas cavalcade. It is nothing but ideas being thrown at you at a rate you can't process them fully.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch because it actually is like the dialogue is so fucking fast that it can be difficult. Not quite to Tommy Galaxy level, but it's about that. But it is also a surprisingly emotional show towards the end.
Like, that's the impression that I kind of got from it.
Yeah.
And I think part of why I value that is because, like, as somebody who writes stuff, I've always been pretty good at just coming up with minutiae for... I probably butchered that word, so now I have no right to be mad at you for
minutia. I have no idea what's correct. You know why? Because it doesn't
minutia.
matter.
Yeah,
because the point is, what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So coming up with the minutia was always easy for me, but really connecting with and understanding my characters is something that I really had to work at. So I'm more impressed by that when somebody understands their characters
I also
and work a film.
have tried to be a writer and had the same problem where, as a writer, I understood perfectly what I wanted my characters to do and like where I wanted them to end up, but have no idea how to get them there. Yeah. So I have no understanding of plot. But it's funny though because what always impresses me is someone else doing something that I feel like I could do, but doing it way better. Or like I love watching something and thinking, I would have written that, but I can't because I'm not a writer, and this guy is, and he's done it better than even I imagined, you know.
Yeah, and that's
is why it actually took me longer to get into plot, because I have so little concept of how to make a good plot that it took a long time for me to like appreciate interesting plots. And it was really like Madoka when I first like thought, like, I liked that show more than I liked its characters, and that was confusing for me because I never liked a show for the story before. So I was like, wow, this story's actually interesting, you know.
That's Brotherhood kind of hit that point for me. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
The plot gets very intense in the later part of the show for sure.
It's like it compared to but that's that's something for me. Like, I do like it when people do something that I'm good at, but like I understand how much time and effort would have to go into it to be able to do that. Like my favorite game series that I'm playing right now is Legend of Heroes Trails, the Trails series. So there's Trails in the Sky and there's Trails of Cold Steel. And the thing about those games is that every single NPC in those games has their own name and personality and relationship with all of the other NPCs in town. And every time you go off on a quest, something happens with those characters, and there are like 40 ongoing plots in every single town for every single NPC.
Actually, now that you've described it that way, I kind of want to play that, because what I loved about Persona, because I haven't played through all of 3, and I've never played 4, but I played all of 2, Eternal Punishment. Yeah. And my favorite part of the game is every time you did a dungeon, every character in town would have a new piece of dialogue. So like the most fun part for me was just going and hearing all the new dialogue after I came back from the dungeon. So yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I think you would really love the Trails series.
As long as it's not overly complicated, like Xenoblade Chronicles, where everybody has like a fucking day-night cycle and shit.
Oh, no. It's like very straightforward. There are plot triggers. There are like flags that are raised every time you complete key quests, and those move the plot forward and move the NPCs forward. So every time you complete a key quest, and you'll absolutely know when that happens, you can just go around and talk to everybody in town and learn new things about them and all their friends. You would love it. I think that we appreciate the same things about games more than we appreciate the same things about... I don't know.
Do you think Dark Souls is the most perfect masterpiece in history? Except that Bloodborne is even better?
I do. I have not had enough time to invest in those series because they're really fucking hard.
Dark Souls 3 is coming out in 11 days. They're actually not hard. It's the difficulty is not knowing things.
Yeah, and it's
not hard to play. It's hard to know what to do.
Knowing what to do.
Because I'm fucking terrible at video games, and I avoided Dark Souls for like 5 years because I thought it would be too hard. And then once I'd watched other people play it and like knew what to do, and then I played it, it turned out to not be hard at all.
But like the fact that Bloodborne has fucking elder gods in it, and the way that they're done gives me the biggest boner on the fucking planet.
Man. You don't gotta tell me, huge Lovecraft fan. So.
And yeah, like Fallout New Vegas is my favorite Fallout for all that shandification stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
shandification. That's basically what we're talking about with this whole living in the world. If you want to know what we mean, go watch Mr. Beatong's video on the shandification of Fallout. It's probably my favorite analysis video ever. Yeah, and it's great.
It's a beautiful video.
I managed to tie this tangent back into the actual topic of Erased, which we should probably wrap up this podcast because we're just talking about video games now.
I will wrap it up momentarily. So, had one more point to make about video games, which is that
not relevant, but okay.
No, it's the reason that I value this in video games over like anime and movies and stuff is video games are mostly shit at delivering emotional story beats.
Yeah, I would agree. I have played one game that has made me feel anything about the story as an adult, and that was Mass Effect 1 and 2 and parts of 3, but that's it.
Yeah, Mass Effect, Undertale, Persona, few things, but pulling this back to Erased, I had a thought that I just remembered. I made a note of it to make sure that I remembered this because it was like a pretty big good thought while we were talking about episodic versus binge structure. Yeah. I think that the reason that you don't like A1 Pictures is because all of their shows are structured to be consumed in a week-to-week bite-sized basis.
That sounds like a real stretch. I mean, I can't... the only way I would be able to accept that line of thinking is if you looked at every show I like and told me that all of them were better to be binge watched. And I don't think that's remotely true, and I don't think most people would say so. Most of the shows I like are very episodic, but I just binge watch everything. It's just how I consume media. Like, I don't think it's possible for me to like something more that's watched week by week, regardless of the type of show it is.
I think that there are episodic series that can be consumed in binges or bite-sized things, but like A1 Pictures shows are built in such a way, like you describe them as McDonald's, and I don't think that's entirely apt. I use the metaphor that they're kind of like the Ubisoft, and their shows have this sort of Ubisoft sandbox design.
They
to
make
them.
things that I never want to play in my life.
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
They're exactly like Ubisoft.
But like the thing is, like all of Ubisoft games are like, if you play those games for more than 4 hours at a time, you're probably going to get fucking sick of them really fast because they're very...
I think I'd probably get sick of them if I touched them, honestly.
Yeah, they hit the same points over. And McDonald's, have you tried binge eating McDonald's?
Yes.
You fucking not good.
I have, and no, it's not good.
It is not good. And like the thing is that their stuff is designed to be like...
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you because this is getting into that metaphor thing I was describing just now about anime characters, where
and now
it's
you're
getting
starting
so
to hate me.
esoteric that this no longer has a connection to, like, I can't relate to it anymore. Like, I think maybe you're right about some of this, but it's like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I can eat fast food 3 days in a row and it's not a problem. It's like, it's a little too...
Okay,
life isn't this cut and dry that I think that there's certain shows that should be watched one way or another. Like, I don't know about that.
Okay, we'll
and again,
we'll
if you wanted to prove this thesis to me, you'd really have to go through all my favorite shows and be like, I have confirmed that nothing you like is a good weekly show, you know?
Well, going through all your favorite shows would take a week in itself. I'd have to binge watch your anime list.
Well, I mean, like, look through them and find...
Yeah.
I'm sure we've seen plenty of the same stuff. You've watched a lot of anime.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just reading your anime list requires a binge watch.
Yeah, that could take, 7 fucking years.
But, yeah, like, I definitely something to put a pin in for later, because I think it's an interesting notion. And maybe we can discuss it.
I think it could be an interesting notion, but I think it's a vast stretch to assume of my personal taste. I think the notion that this show could be better weekly is an interesting notion, but I don't know that would change anything for me. Or not that it would change anything for me, but that if it was, written the way that I consume, that I would automatically feel differently, I don't know. I think it's too complicated of a question to try and answer that way.
Yeah. I at least not in the last few minutes of a podcast. I'm just bringing it up because I thought of it and you were in the middle of a really good tangent and I was just like, I'm going to let him roll, and I noted it down, and there was some contextual stuff around it that made more sense that slipped my mind. Curse you, short-term memory. Write better. But yeah, all in all, I think that this was a pretty productive discussion.
Yes,
we understand each other better.
I think I kind of got where you were coming from, maybe more than I even thought I did. It's just that, like, how do I put it? Like, you clearly get all this show's problems, and they don't bother you enough, and the things that you like, you really like.
Yeah.
And that's really all there is to it, which is what I figured that was the case, but then I had to kind of, like, confirm that, like, what scenes was it? Like, what is it about this character you like so much? And I feel like I get that now.
I hope I've done a good job justifying it so that person who's concerned for my well-being
I think this is more important for the viewers than it is for us, because going by the comments on both of our videos, people clearly had no idea where we were coming from. Like, some people did. In fact, I'd even say maybe half of everyone did. But there was clearly a lot of, what the fuck are you talking about? This show either is amazing or is terrible, and, like, completely not getting where we were coming from. So I think I think we've been fucking thorough enough that we could explain ourselves to those people. Not that most of them will probably watch this. Most of the people who will watch this will be people who are fans of us, who already understood us.
Or well, I mean, fans of mine will probably come to this, and fans of yours who maybe don't understand me will hopefully understand it. Anyway,
that's it, guys. We had fun. It was good. I think we did it. I never have to talk about Erased again, so I feel great. It's a weight off of my shoulders.
Wait, there is one more question. Do you at least acknowledge that the ED and the OP are good? because I'm gonna have to talk about those later. I don't want to leave.
I
that
don't think
open.
they're bad, but they didn't grab me. The ED had a lot of imagery that I didn't understand what any of it meant. Like, I wasn't sure if those were supposed to be the characters from the show sometimes, or if it was just like weird drawings of ladies.
What? Well, I mean, some of them are the little girl who only shows up in like the last episode.
It kind of reminded me of the Welcome to the NHK ED at the very beginning, when it's like all the like symbolic looking images and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like the individual shots were cool looking. I don't really like either song that much, so that wasn't doing it for me. And that's a big part of liking an OP or ED. It's Bump of Chicken, right? Who did the opening?
No, it's Flo.
It's not Flo.
It's
Flo.
No, sorry, it's not Flo. It's Asian Kung Fu Generation.
That one, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
like
it's
Asian Kung Fu Generation and like Bump of Chicken and maybe not quite Lark NCL, but there's like a bunch of those like contemporary rock Japanese bands, and they all sound exactly the same to me. I would call it Honey and Clover Core. Like that very specific brand of like adult contemporary where it's always like a 4.5 minute song that's very soulful and like, you know, it's kind of like an emotional but fun rockin' little song. And my friend, like one of my best friends, like used to be really into like that genre of music. And he would always listen to those songs, and they all sound the same to me. So, like, when I hear something like that, I'm just like, oh, it's a one of those. It's, Asian Kung Fu Generation. That's exactly what I thought it would be, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
I really like OPs and EDs that are, like, something totally different, and it's not like any other one you've heard. You know, like, if it's a song that's either, like, made for the show, or it's just a weird band, or just a cool sound, like, I tend to like that kind of shit.
Yeah, that's
something
that's
that feels
fair.
more specific. It doesn't feel like it's something that other shows have. Because when you've got 10 different shows, I would even say that the Kekkai Sensen OP I have the same problem with, where that band is, which one is that? Is that Bump of Chicken?
That's Bump of Chicken.
Okay,
I mean, I see a lot of differences between that and Asian Kung Fu Generation, but I can get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's just
the
that like
overall
those are
feel of
bands.
it.
Those are bands who have done a lot of anime OPs, and you get this sense of like, you know, that it's just like a cool band to have in an OP, and that's why it's there. Not that that sound is relevant to the show, just that it's a cool OP band. Whereas like something like Shaft always has like great OPs, or Madhouse always has great OPs. That's another thing that's like a totally a studio thing that I would. If Kanipa tried to say that studios don't have a culture, I'd be like, how about the fact that Madhouse always has metal bands and like, where's why is that a thing?
Why do they keep hiring Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, huh?
Yeah,
Kanipa?
Fear and Loathing and Galnerius and like all these other bands that I fucking love. I'm a huge fan of all those, you know. So.
I enjoy those too. I do think that Riri was chosen like for its meaning. Obviously very hard to interpret a Japanese song as an English listener, but it's an older song. It's not like a pop song. It was something that they chose because it was popular at the time that Erased is set, and B because
is Asian Kung Fu Generation that old?
Asian Kung Fu Generation's been working on like fucking Full Metal Alchemist, man, like way back.
What do you mean by the time when?
That's 2006.
So you mean the current time Erased?
The current, not 1988,
but
no,
2006. That song was popular.
Like it. I mean, it would have been badass.
Kind of like with One More Time, One More Chance in 5 centimeters per second, where it was like a popular song from the 90s that they used for some reason.
It would have been badass if they like changed up the theme song when he went back in time to something by Hironobu Kageyama. Yeah. That would have. But you know, obviously I come at these things more wanting the cinematography to be interesting, and there's certainly stuff to unpack in those videos.
I'll give them that in episode 11, because the kid had apparently died, and then he doesn't show up in the OP, and I was like, that's a clever, that's a clever one right there, because he's supposed to be dead. Of course, he's not dead, so it doesn't really completely make sense. But
he doesn't exist in that time frame now. because he's in a coma. So it's,
Yeah.
he lost out his childhood. It's.
We'll wait. You're gonna make a video.
Yeah,
about
I'm
this,
gonna
so
do
we
a
shouldn't
video
go
on it.
too
I don't
in
want to
depth.
spoil. I don't want to spoil the video, but yeah. I will say, semi spoilers for my season recap. It's not my absolute favorite OP of this season, even though I think that it's really good. And the Erased ED isn't my absolute favorite ED of this season, even though I think it's really good. But obviously I will make videos about them because holy shit, have you seen the hits that Erased videos get? I gotta find a way to talk about Sword Art Online again.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I've been accused a lot of doing Erased just for the hits. And I'm like, it's a matter of joined interest. Like, I can easily find the desire to make a video about Erased knowing that it will be popular. Like, it's not that I did it for the hits, but if I thought that video was only going to get 20,000 views, I would not have done it because I wouldn't have cared enough about the show. But because I know it's going to get a lot, then it makes it worth it, you know? Which is why it's been really hard for me to find it in myself to write about Rakugo, because I want, if I'm gonna talk about Rakugo, there's so much good in it that I could write a fucking huge thing. I could write hours about it, but it's such an unpopular show that no one's gonna watch that, and it's not worth it to write an hours-long video about a show that no one cares about.
And it's such a shame because, like, honestly, it's instant contender for, like, one of my favorite anime of all time.
Yeah, I have to finish it. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but I absolutely loved them, and it's over now, right? So I can just do it.
There's one 45-minute episode left.
Okay. Are there any other 45 other than the first and last, or is it just those?
No, they're all 24 episodes. 24.
So I gotta catch up so I can get hype for that.
Yeah,
that's another thing I like doing, and I did this with Erased, is that I like catching up before the last episode so that I can ride the hype wave at the last minute with everybody, you know? Just like, it's like a sneaky little trick where everyone else is all excited and I just sneak up and get excited with them, and I get to, you know, for none of the effort.
you blue shell all of the guys leading the race. You motherfucker.
All right.
But yeah, so
go watch Showa Roku Rakugo Shinju. Whether you like Erased or not, it's the best fucking show of the season.
It's the best show of the season. It will be contender for best show of the year.
Yeah, it will be. If something is better than it this year, then this will be an incredible year for anime. Because like, damn.
I mean, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4. It's obviously going to be a masterwork. But no, watch Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, and yeah, you know, whatever you think of the 14th highest rated anime of all time, we have both set our pieces.
On my anime list.
Yeah, on my anime list, which means nothing.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah,
and tune in for the Weebcast later this month.